Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fun and Games Podcast. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I'm Matt A.K. Stormageddon.
And you're listening to our PAX West 2024 wrap-up special. PAX West has come and gone. We certainly were there, and we did everything we could, and there's always more to do. So that's why it's not just me, it's not just Matt. We are joined by our associate producer, Sarah Moonen.
Hey, everyone.
And the indie informer, Jill Grodt.
Hello.
Welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much.
So we're just going to talk about indies for the next 2 hours, right? That's why you're
Yeah,
here?
no, that's the whole
Totally
point.
the
Yeah.
point.
Anytime I'm on something, that's what happens anyway. So,
This is why we're here.
ha!
I mean, we could all talk about Zelda, but I feel like enough people are going to do that.
No, get out of here.
We were
with
going to
that.
buy that anyway.
I also love the fact that, the four of us and a lot of other folks who were hanging with at PAX West, we're very indie focused because we like to cover those games. We like to highlight them because, of course we're going to buy Zelda. But the first day of PAX has Media Hour. The floor opens an hour early for those of us with media badges so we can feel extra special. And I certainly do. And I love the fact that certainly most of the folks I talk to, that hour is used to go to whatever big-ass booth we were like, that line's going to be too long. I'm not going to try to get an interview with Nintendo or Bandai Namco or anything else, but I want to play Kakarot. So I'm going to get online and do that. So that's when we played Zelda and did everything.
My media hour was very different because I failed to plan appropriately.
Oh, no.
I don't know if y'all saw, but I got a couple of, little known people writing for the Indie Informer, namely past Game Informers Marcus Stewart, Charles Hart, who I haven't worked with prior to this, but he's a lovely human being.
Nice.
Met him at Summer Game Fest, and Wesley LeBlanc. And it was actually the first time that Marcus was going, it was his premiere article on the website. He'd never actually used the back end before. So the moment I went into PAX for the media hour was when he was going up. And when I planned that, I was like, oh, that's so smart. I'm going to be busy anyway. So something's going up on the website. It's going to be great. I didn't think about the fact that I would need to be troubleshooting and helping with the socials and figuring out how everything goes up.
The less glamorous side of the job.
Yeah, I went in, I saw all the lovely, pretty, empty halls of things that I could play calling to me, and immediately just took a turn and hid behind a pillar so that I could.
Oh, no.
Yeah, on the PAX's not great internet,
Oh, yes.
I'm attempting to do all of this, okay, I'm gonna make sure I'm editing and I'm making sure this goes up and making sure this goes out on socials and everything. And I'm yeah, this wasn't actually great planning. I thought it was great, but and then the hour was almost done. I'm okay, cool. Now it's time for me to go see one thing, I guess.
Pro tip, the media room has better internet for exactly that.
Yeah.
I struggled with it all PAX, and anytime I needed to post something, I was all right, go to the media room.
Yeah, you always forget. You're the internet's just going to be there, and it's not.
Yeah.
You know?
And every convention center, you know what? They probably have great internet, but it's a big place and everybody wants a piece of it. And so even decent internet, it becomes a slog.
Well, from my time as an event producer, what I remember is that there's exhibitor internet that you can pay different tiers for usually. And so I actually think they're gating it for general public so that they can charge more money for exhibitors.
That makes sense.
But this is not a podcast about complaining about what we could and couldn't get done at the convention. We got to do a lot of cool stuff. We'll have some interviews at the end of the show like we always do. And we are going to go over our top 3 games of show. We all decided to kind of pick 3 different games so we can feature as many games as possible. But first and foremost, I think it's important that Geoff talks about the fact that he was again a last-minute addition to a panel 2 days before.
Yes, this is what I do. Are you suddenly strapped for an interesting human being to fill a space? I'm an interesting human. I take up space. Hi there. I'm Geoff Moonen. And I was on Jenna Stieber's PAX panel show because PAX does a wonderful job of getting Jenna there, of setting up the time, changing the location once or twice, and not booking anybody. So Jenna had to scramble a little bit. And so much like PAX East, I was part of the panel show on West. This time I won, which really,
Hooray!
it means as much as winning on any other panel show, only
I
for
suppose.
pride. But it was a great
Yeah.
time. Alex Van Aken was on there as well. And so that's who I can think of off the top of my head. But the whole panel was wonderful. And it was a very fun time. And most of it was Final Fantasy themed or about Arma 2.
I was going to say loosely Final Fantasy themed. I think the word final was the most important through line, whether or not it was actually about a Final Fantasy.
And I'm very familiar with the word final, so that's great. You know, we have all edited audio and video. How many times do you put final into the file name?
Yeah. Final. No, this is real final.
We mean it this time, V3 final. But it was a lot of fun. And yeah, no, I did not realize how many mods of Arma 2 became actual games because I've never played Arma 2. So, you know, it's always nice to know the gaps in your knowledge. It helps you grow.
I like learning things.
I love learning things. And I like doing dumb trivia stuff. And speaking of dumb trivia stuff, Jill was also doing some dumb trivia stuff at PAX West.
I did. I didn't win, but you know, it was a fun time, and I was always
But you were in the lead.
I was always in the lead.
Yeah, you were and in the lead.
And in the lead.
And in the lead. It was such a great moment when Roger and I hit upon that particular name because we're like, no matter what score our team is at, the host, one Jacob McCourt, will always have to say, and in the lead. So like we were always going to be winning no matter what. It was great. Yeah, we played video game trivia, which we actually had a practice, quote unquote, the night before.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because when we all showed up Thursday, I want to say, it was trivia at a pub whose name I definitely remember. And all of us were on a team. And it was just like, y'all being smart. And I'm like, I contributed, I think, one answer. And I was like, I'm happy with that. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We went off the rails pretty immediately,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Asa stirred the pot pretty quickly. Like,
So, Jill, I wanted to tell you, I actually really enjoyed your trivia methodology, which was double down, go for the joke, go big or go home. You know, there were times where like you would get one little piece of information and it would get bigger later. You're like, no, we're locking it in number one.
We are
Absolutely.
100%.
It made for good entertainment, and if you'd gotten it, the entire place would have roared. You didn't, but it was still great.
Right.
Yeah. All we knew, like at one point, was like this game someone liked, and we're like, "Yep, we know what it is.
Yeah.
Don't even worry about it." You know,
we've got it. We've got the answer.
It was fun kind of doing when at Hopvine was the pub where the trivia
There you
happened,
go.
and it was really fun getting to do that. Yeah, why not go in on those sorts of things?
Yeah.
And I think because Asa was going to be on the panel last PAX West and couldn't. Oh, they've been chomping at the bit on this one. So
Yeah. It's true.
everyone was sunk as far as this being normal, fair, sane. I don't know. Pick an adjective.
Yeah, and the pub trivia was a lot of fun. We were the team of I Have a Podcast. It was the four of us, along with Luke Lewis and Claire Helmberger. And we came in second place, which, as far as I'm concerned, is the moral first place, really.
And we gave out cards for our podcast because there were other nerds there who were like, wait, what's your podcast?
Yeah, which also helped.
Unintended.
I was just trying to do the most important thing, which was make the host laugh with the team name. And also, Jacob is a wonderful individual, and when I can make him laugh, I feel like I'm winning.
Yeah.
No matter.
Also, I got like 2 questions right because of previous panels I'd been on with Jacob, and so I'll take that moral victory as well. But it was a lot of fun, and I'm hoping that Jacob had started doing the pub trivia thing in his town. I want to say like 6 months ago or so, and so I'm glad that he was able to do it locally in Seattle as well. It was a lot of fun. Hopefully he'll keep doing that because a lot of folks turned out. Our friends from the Great Game Debate came by and also played, and it was a lot of fun hanging out with folks and just kind of being goofy and doing trivia and yelling random Pokemon names at Jacob for no reason.
No, it was a guess who this guy is section, and
That's true.
we maybe just guessed they were all Pokemon.
It's
I
true.
mean,
Could have been.
Yeah, could have
Who's to
been.
say they're not Ditto?
Right. You don't know.
Everything is a ditto.
Everything's a Ditto.
It could be.
Look for the little eyes.
Video game trivia is always a fun time, and you guys did great. But Asa did lean in pretty early to just be the heel of the panel the entire night.
Yeah. Like he was actually mimicking people's voices from the audience and calling out audience so that the audience would have. But then the audience would know the answer.
And we won.
So,
The audience won. So, you know.
yeah.
I say we because I was part of the audience. And so, you know, that means I won, truly.
And really, when you're having fun, the audience does always win. but we also got the most points. So, we
Quite
won on
literally.
all grounds today.
Yeah, we technically won, which is the best kind of winning. The technical
Best kind of
win.
winning.
We also saw a ton of really great folks. The folks from Boss Rush, we mentioned Great Game Debate before. Of course, cross-play combos. The incredible Indie Informer who's here, we got to hang out with quite a bit. And just a bunch of other folks. We got to go to some parties, which usually isn't the case for us at these events. Usually our evenings are pretty open. But I got to go to the Baldur's Gate 3 anniversary party, which was really great. Got to meet Sven, the head of the studio, tell him that it's taken me a year to get to the near end of Act 1 with 2 friends. And he kind of just shook his head and went, wow, you're really dedicated. I said, yeah, I know. Got to see a bunch of folks I hadn't seen in a while, Victoria Tran, got to hang out with Scott White, meet some new folks. And so it was a really good time. And then you guys got to go to the What Good Games Life is Strange party, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great time. Most of the folks you just mentioned were there at that party with us, making fun of you for ditching us for the Baldur's Gate 3 party, which were you at the Baldur's Gate 3 party?
I was. I was pretty proud of it, too.
Yeah, we noticed. But we had a really good time at that. I actually liked the party a lot because it had like different vibes. You could just chill in the VIP room and not talk to people. You could be taking pictures. The hot dog guy was there.
Gotta love
hot dog guy.
We made him take a picture with us, which was A+.
I mean, I feel like everybody did that.
And somehow we got VIP wristbands and we're having unlimited drinks, which was dangerous and wonderful.
Yes.
That's the way to do it.
Well, and also while we were there, we saw friends and we ran into people. You do the networking thing. And at one point, we were standing by one of just the big industrial fans they had in there because Seattle just seems to have a moral objection to air conditioning.
Yeah, and so I stood in front of a pan and I had my Beyonce moment, my Marilyn moment, my I'm in a windswept rom-com moment, but I was just standing there because I was going to pass out.
And it honestly was the best secondary place to just chill with random people that wasn't the bar. I was chatting with somebody and talking games, talking things. Person Celia, we exchanged business cards. Celia looks at my business card and goes, I recognize this. You work with Matt. And I went, you're Celia from Yacht Club, aren't you? She's like, yes, I am. And the conversation just got even funnier.
Yeah.
And I bring this up also because Celia and Sean from Yacht Club were there and they said, oh, yeah, we are going to go to the Baldur's Gate 3 party, but we got invited to this one too. So we thought we'd make an appearance. And I said, that is the polite and professional thing to do. Matt.
Look, I got to hang out with Ben Starr, and he called me his best friend, so, I'll take what I can get.
Also, you got the invite sort of off of the goodwill of Scott. No, that's absolutely the right thing to do. I just like razzing you.
No, of course. I mean, I also know myself, and I don't do 2 parties. I go to 1 party, and then I go to bed.
Also true.
I mean, having both those parties at the same time, it was so funny having like everyone, kind of split in half. So like I was at the Baldur's Gate party and I was getting text messages from people who were at What's Good or just hanging out at a hotel. And they're like, come over. I'm like, no, I'm at the Baldur's Gate. I'm like, Matt, I'm not going anywhere. Like, this is the one party I'm attending. Everyone calm down. Like you said, a mix of networking and socializing. And it's really like disconcerting when Ben Starr's looking you at the face. He's like this close to you. And he's like, yeah, I know your website. I'm like, no, you don't, liar. But you can't call Ben Starr a liar because he's always honest about everything.
Dare you observe me? No.
I don't know what to do.
Right. And it's honestly really nice to go to these and still feel like a fan.
Yeah.
We are there. We are professional. We are covering these things and we're reporting it to y'all listening right now and on our various outlets. But at the end of it all, it just felt so cool to just see what people are releasing, get to talk to folk. Sean from Yacht Club, I got to talk to him and tell him, you're kind of why I have a podcast. In a slightly less gushing and slightly more coherent way, but basically that. And that felt really cool.
And he thought it was cool, too.
Yeah.
And, Matt getting to watch you book and then go to the Behemoth interview, which folks will hear later. Like, it's the little fan in all of us. It's, we do this because we love video games and what people make. So getting to have that is great, too.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about going to the BG3 party was getting to tell people whose game I love, why I love it, and that it means a lot. Also, like Kieran was there, who we've interviewed before. We played the Baldur's Gate board game with and got to come back to him. It's funny, me, Finn, and Scott come around the corner. Kieran says and goes, "Oh, it's you," because we like to pick on him when we see him. But it was lovely to just catch up with these folks. I got to meet the developer of the Slay the Spire board game, who was at that party and was really nice. Look, at one point I got to watch Scott White and Ben Starr geek out about Final Fantasy VIII, the best Final Fantasy game to them that gets a bad rap. And Scott convinced Ben to come on RPG University about it, which is fun, right? Getting to chat with those people. And Scott's wanted to do something like that for a while. I mean, yes, of course, Ben Starr, great voice actor, lovely person, the main character of a Final Fantasy game, but it's more to Scott, I think. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but this is someone else who loves a game I love that a lot of people don't like. And getting to share in those experiences, I think, are really fun, and having those moments are really fun. And what kind of PAX outside of seeing games is all about, is making these connections and getting to geek out about the things we love together.
Yeah, you don't talk about it too much professionally because it's not a professional thing, but getting to connect to people who, first of all, a lot of the time just online, you've never met in person, but just being with your people, the people who understand exactly what your life is and what you're going through and what you love, and they love the things you love, and they love it in the way that you love it. It's really, you don't get that anywhere else. The people around you maybe like video games, or maybe they don't understand, they still think you play video games and that's all you do. Then you suddenly have this group of people who are yeah, I've been in that scenario before. I know how that feels. I love this weird, odd game that no one else has ever heard of before. Remember that piece of trailer from the 90s? And you're oh my gosh, yes, everyone. I think at one point we were all out and we were walking through the arch building, and we picked up a guy who was eating a hot dog.
Yeah.
It was so great. And we don't know his name. We still don't know his name.
He may have been the head of a studio. He may have been somebody that we really look up to, and we're if we knew who he was, we would have not been chill or cool at all. But as far as we were concerned, we were walking around. We had some little light up foam sticks. We were going to get some fries and a drink or something. And he was like, "You guys look like you're having a good time." And everyone was just "Your hot dog looks really good." And suddenly we're best friends.
Yeah, we realized that at least 7 people in the group were "Man, that hot dog smells good." And I think that was the invitation, that this guy was "Cool, I guess I should go hang out with these people."
Yeah.
We had a great time.
Conventions are just like making friends in kindergarten. It's kind of awesome. You like finger painting? I love finger painting.
Yeah, basically. And I think also at several points that evening while we were hanging out, one of us thought any other one of us knew that guy, when it turns out none of us knew that guy, which was also very funny.
We were just playtesting a game.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Who's that guy?
Who's that guy?
Who's that guy? Then that guy the next day recognized one of our members and said something very nice to him.
Aww.
As yeah, it was a really lovely person. So that's great.
Love that. I love the camaraderie that you can experience at PAX. It's kind of a big part of why I enjoy that space more than other conventions, just because there's this kind of level of understanding and camaraderie, especially across folks who are working within the media side together, wanting to work together and collaborate, which the collaboration is a blast. We got to collaborate with a few folks while we were there. More of that stuff will come out, and as it does, we'll share it. I think the best place, if you want to see the stuff that we got to be a part of, is to stick to our Twitter. We'll share it over there.
Yeah.
It's an exciting time to be in this space, especially when there's so much other shit that's been happening this year that's not been great. To be able to still celebrate games is always nice, while acknowledging that it's not been easy and that we're all trying to make the best of a certain situation that kind of ebbs and flows. But we did also play games at this event. The whole point of going to PAX.
Games were had.
So many and still not enough somehow.
Yeah, it always feels like it's never enough. And so what we're going to do is go around round robin and talk about our top 3. I'm going to leave my number 1, which most folks already know what that is, until last. I will start us off. I want to talk about Rugrats Adventures in Gameland, which was a title that I knew we had made an interview for, but for whatever reason, I thought it was out already. I don't know why. But Geoff and I got to not only chat with the head developer, Tomas, but also get to play it multiplayer. And then during our interview, Sarah played solo, in the background, to the point of distraction at one point, which was very funny because we were just commenting on what we saw on the screen.
That's fair. I was immediately better than you guys were.
I mean, that's true. And that tends to be how it is. But for those who don't know, Rugrats Adventures in Gameland is like a spoof on the retro licensed games of the past, especially for the Nintendo. And barely even a spoof because it was actually developed on NES hardware and can run on an NES. I believe there is an NES cartridge version of it available, but the major release version has an HD coat of paint that looks like the animation from the old cartoon. And it is a side-scrolling action platformer. Think DuckTales, think Chip and Dale, think Darkwing Duck. Pretty much all the Disney Afternoon games plays like that. You can switch between the two graphic styles at any time. I love when games do that. It's basically just a party trick, but I love it every time a remaster or something has that kind of feature. And it was a lot of fun. Geoff and I weren't particularly great at it together, but we just need to work on it, I think. Just have some issues to work out, but I think we'll get there. But it was a lot of fun. The music was great. It really was the vibe of a Nintendo game. And I preferred the Nintendo graphics just because Nintendo sprites have this kind of little off-putting design, trying to fit it into the space that I always loved, that gave it charm. But both versions look great, play great. And as of when we're recording, actually by the time you hear this, it'll be out. I'm very excited for folks to get to play this game because I thought it was a lot of fun and like a nice throwback to like the licensed games of my youth.
The adaptation that's required to make the NES graphics is always such a cool thing to see. And when people succeed at it, what can you do but celebrate it?
It's so funny that you say that because you and Matt were playing on the 8-bit version, and I immediately wanted to play the HD because it felt like being in the show, which I grew up with, which was cool. And the gameplay, it felt a little bit like that to me, but it didn't feel nearly as much as when I was watching the two of you play.
Yeah.
I wonder how much the graphics affect that viewpoint, I suppose.
Yeah, I think because we knew that was the engine it was kind of built on, like I kind of like internalized that. But yeah, the HD version definitely more like you were kind of wandering through the cartoon, which was really neat.
And the fact that so many of the games, and and Matt and I talk about this all the time on the show, they make the games that look like it could run on the hardware, but it really couldn't because of all these little tricks and things. This game can run on the NES. They made an NES version, limited run games, sold it. And that's effing wild to me.
I love that. I love that we can still get new Sega Genesis, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Game Boy games. I mean, there's a Game Boy Advance game from Limited Run that I'm very excited about that we will hopefully have more to talk about as more information comes out about it. But I think it's dope that people still want to design in these old platforms to give us that true sense of nostalgia.
And as big physical collectors, we obviously love that too in our household.
Yes.
Yeah. It's also just a little scary that like our childhood is the thing now that it's nostalgic.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, I'm not ready for that.
Yeah, being the target audience for nostalgia is a double-edged sword.
Oh no, see, I love it. I love being the target audience. Make things for me. I don't care if it makes me feel old. Make things for me.
Too busy having fun with it.
Geoff, what was your number 3 from the show?
Speaking of a little bit of nostalgia, but in a very different way, my number 3 is actually More Than One Way.
Good one.
Yeah, no, that's from Disordered Media, is sort of a puzzle, horror, kind of puzzle box adventure, I want to say. We only got to play one segment of it, but it looks like it's part of something a lot bigger. It's built around kind of an abandoned game in an earlier internet age, and all of the aspects and pieces of it are pulled from various eras of the internet. We think about the Wild West of the internet and the chat rooms and the spaces and creepypastas and everything else, and really kind of leaning into that. And I love that kind of horror where you are, I think in the interview that we did, I described it as, this is everything I was afraid was going to happen on the internet when I was a kid, in like the predator kind of way, but just you click in a weird place and suddenly, something is coming for you kind of way.
Yeah.
And that's so fun of an environment to have. I really love games that allow for that kind of pick and pull, and you click and move this thing, and all of a sudden you've opened something else. You've unlocked these things again, like a puzzle box kind of feeling. It's why I loved Animal Well so much, because you try this and find that, and I am very excited to see the full experience on the Steam page right now. It doesn't have an announced release date, but it was very evocative, and honestly, for a horror game, that does a significant amount compared to other genres, and the rest of it was a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, the design is really interesting. It has this kind of old school internet vibe. The chat we had with Bug and Spider, the devs of the game, was also a really great chat, which you'll hear later. What's really interesting about this game also is that they haven't even launched the Kickstarter yet. Like, their announcement of existence was at PAX West, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And like, I love that for them, that they got to meet all these people, get all of these meetings and interviews. Then they're going to launch the Kickstarter, which I am absolutely going to back.
Same.
What drew me to it when I booked the appointment was this idea of old school internet pop-up windows. The basic narrative we got, which you'll hear in the interview also, is that it's like what if you found a haunted game where the developers went missing and you're trying to solve what happened to them by playing this haunted game? As someone who's just starting to dabble with survival horror, a thing that Geoff has been more into longer, I loved sharing that experience of exploring the space with Geoff, trying to solve this one room that we were in. It was another fun way to engage with horror. And there were no jump scares. It was mostly creepy sounds. I think there was like one jump scare at one point, but like mostly it was just a vibe. And I like those kinds of horror games better. That's why I love the Alan Wake games, although the second one is scary as shit. But I like vibes because I think that's more unnerving, the constant dread, which makes it for a more entertaining playthrough. It's definitely something I could see myself streaming once it comes out because you're exploring a space and trying not to get scared crapless. It was really dope. I'm glad you brought it up, Geoff, and I'm excited for folks to hear the interview.
There were several different characters you could pick from. I'm interested to know, which character did you pick?
We picked, I can't remember her name now. They had recommended this one because they said that some of the other ones they'd run into some bugs, people getting stuck, and this one was working more consistently.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't remember the character's name, but it's like a young woman and she's gone missing. And you're exploring this cabin, you find like skin under the floorboards and like a beating heart at one point.
A lot of missing persons posters that you need to put in the right place. And yeah, it was very funny how, because they're pulling from different eras and corners of internet history to do it, we're looking at this like gloomy, there's almost like got that like static overlay to what's going on. And then you look over at the next monitor and it is pink and it is glowing, and that is its own kind of terrifying and creepy about it. And you're seeing chat windows, pop-up windows that happen, dialogue boxes, you don't know when they are, what they are. There's a lot of fun of within its self-contained environment of the game, the boundaries therein change constantly. Yeah, that's my kind of horror.
Yeah, I picked Meat, and it was scary because it was sort of my young childhood introduction to the internet. It was sort of flash game, paper doll, the Dress the Girl sort of situation.
Yeah.
And so I was like kind of into it. I'm like, yeah, look, I'm going to make my person look as cute as possible. And then, her face would just have no eyes and look terrifying. I'm like, oh, okay, that's where we are. So yeah, it was this really cool push and pull between things that made me feel young and happy when I was exploring the internet for the first time, and just absolute horror.
It's one to watch out for sure, I think.
Agreed.
Sarah, why don't you tell us what your number 3 is?
So my number 3 is Croak, which, funny enough, was the second thing I played. We went and did the Zelda thing, and then I was like, I'm going to go wander by the indies, find something, and I just saw this cartoony-looking frog with a crown on his head, and nobody was at the booth because it was right after media hour, which was not the case for the whole rest of the con. This booth was swamped, packed. Clearly word got around that this was good. I guess I'd call it like a precision platformer with an interesting mechanic. So you're this little frog, and you have a little jump and a big jump, and a big tongue and a little tongue. And why the tongue is important is because the little tongue helps you like almost wall jump, but on your same wall. And the big tongue is my favorite because it turns you into a pinball. You do it, and then you go all over the place. And as many people who listen to this podcast know, I love pinball games, pinball mechanics. This game was just so much fun. And I'm good at platforming. It took me a minute to get this one under my thumbs. And as soon as I did, I was like, oh, I like this. You made me work for it, but I like it.
Yeah, it's a good one. I played it at the Mix at your recommendation because we got to go to Media Hour for the Mix also, which is just like a little party where a bunch of the indie games that are also on the show floor are set up, and you can kind of wander around and chat with the devs. It's kind of more one-on-one for folks who want to go outside of the convention center.
It's sort of our ideal spread of games, to be honest.
Right. So I played it there and got to talk to the devs. But yeah, it was awesome. There's a boss fight against a giant beaver on a bicycle. The animation is actually done by former Cuphead animators.
And they didn't tell us that. They buried the lead.
Yeah. Buried that.
Yeah.
They might not be able to say that officially. I have no idea. And it also is incredibly early in their didn't they finish the demo for this 2 weeks ago or something ridiculous?
I was like, man, how much you have done? They're like, we just got this in.
Yeah. So they're targeting, I think, 2026, maybe? I don't remember. But I agree with everything Sarah said. It's precision platforming, I think, at its best. And it's one of those games where, like a Celeste, not to compare everything to Celeste, but in the same vein with Celeste, when you screw up and you're like, well, that was on me. I missed that. I didn't do that right. Like, there was never a moment where I died in Croak and was like, this game sucks or I can't get it right. Like, it's me. I was like, I screwed this up. Oh, I didn't do that jump right. And I never got stuck longer than a few minutes because I would solve it and then keep moving. And I think some of the best action platformers do that, where you get stuck for maybe a minute or two, you run your gears, and then you're like, oh, wait, what if I do this? And then get across. And it's gorgeous. One of the most gorgeous looking games I think we saw all weekend because it's hand-drawn.
Yeah. And that frog, as Sarah mentioned, little fat frog with a crown and a cape. I think he's meant to be a prince.
Yeah.
Yeah, they said that he was actually a human prince who has turned into a frog. And he was apparently not great to the mouse people.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, that's why they're sort of after him. I'm like, what did he do? I'm like, they wouldn't tell me what he had done in his human form to make these mice so angry, but like, I'm excited to find out what that is.
His design has so much charisma. Very, very.
It does.
It's got swag.
Yes.
And in that way that if he were to be voiced, not necessarily by Matt Berry, but a Matt Berry-like performance.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
The music was great too, which is like, I think,
yeah.
key to a platformer like that because it helps keep you engaged. I'm really glad I got hands-on with it. Thank you for suggesting that, Sarah.
Of course.
I didn't get to it till the very last day when finally stuff died down a little bit, but I'm really glad I made the time.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things about having a community of other media folks is we all recommend things to each other. The first thing you say to everybody is, how's your con going? What have you played that I need to go find? And I think that that's really helpful when there's just so many things and the lines get longer and longer as the days go on.
Jill, what is your third game?
So I haven't ranked them, but
Then you can just
I'll go
pick
ahead.
one of the three games.
I'm going to go ahead and go with God Save Birmingham. This is a game that had caught my eye during the Future Games show not too long before going to PAX. So this is one I went in knowing, like, I want to get my hands on this game. Essentially, it is a survival game with zombies, of course, but it's set in like 14th century Birmingham. So it's like, it appeals to the very nerdy medieval historian of my soul. Basically, you go in and you have had, it seems, a very difficult night. You're bleeding. No one explained why. I was just bleeding. You're starving to death. And you're in this sort of like barn situation. So you go look around and you can find bandages and you can find eggs. Like, it is very survival-y in that you have to take care of your hunger and you have to take care of your thirst. It just happens that outside of this barn, you can hear like shuffling and you're like, what's going on out there? Maybe I don't want to go out. Maybe I just want to stay in this barn. This seems nice. You walk out and it's this like really faithful recreation of this real medieval town. And the developers did talk about the fact that they picked Birmingham because people know that name offhand, even if you're not like a resident. So it's sort of got the name recognition. But there are also really good records from this time period in Birmingham's history. And there's a really good reason why zombies might have happened. Like, this is like the era of the plague. This is the time when people are really freaking out about everyone's dying and what happens. And I'm like, this is perfect. Why has no one thought about a bubonic plague zombie game? Because that's what was happening at the time. People were just dropping left and right. If there was going to be a moment for zombies, this would have been it. So you walk out and you have a pitchfork is your first kind of basic thing because you start off in a barn. So of course that's the only implement you have.
Yeah.
And you see these people shuffling around. You're like, maybe everything's cool. And then they try to attack you. The whole idea is you are trying to just survive in this world. I mean, it's all pre-alpha at this point. So I'm already digging what I was checking out. You are trying to get through all of these zombies, but you also have to get out of the town somehow, which, like, considering how many zombies are around, seems like a really kind of tough ask. I didn't last.
Oh.
You seem so disappointed, but
No, I'm just sad.
yeah, they talked about how, like, they're adding all kinds of different crafting to the game and like cooking to the game, which is stuff that I'm really excited about and interested to see. So I think one of them is like end state, you just killed every zombie.
Huh.
And I'm like, that doesn't sound easy. Because here I am with my pitchfork. I go after someone. My first attack, I hit like mid chest. Pitchfork just goes through him. And now there's a zombie like attached to my weapon trying to get me.
And this isn't like Tears of the Kingdom where you now have the zombie pitchfork and it adds +2 to damage. Nothing?
No, nothing.
Disappointing.
So you're like, oh, that was way worse than I thought. So the person who's like helping me through this scenario was like, kick him, kick him. I'm like, I don't know what kick is. Hold on. So I'm like, you're in this real panic moment because zombies. So I get them off and they're like, okay, so here's what you want to do. You want to aim for like the limbs or the head. Because if you hit them a couple of times, an arm will come off and their head will come off. They won't be dead, but at least the danger zones are sort of taken care of.
Right.
So you don't have to worry so much. And then you can kill them. Like, okay, cool. This is fine. Just one-on-one me zombie. I can take this. So I'm like creeping around, trying real hard to be like sneaky and everything. On a hill is like a big cathedral. I'm like, that's going to be the place that's safe, right? Spoilers, it wasn't.
Aw.
Even though I did find food because I was starving to death and I had just had a few eggs. So I'm like, I'm going to die of hunger.
The PAX experience.
So I have I have to go out and like do something. I can't just sit where I am, which is why like this survival aspect is so good right now, because a lot of the times when I'm playing a survival game and it's just a matter of like, go craft your log cabin and go do whatever, like the hunger thing for me is kind of hit and miss because I would like to just be doing my log cabin building and whatever else I'm doing. But here it's very much a mechanic to get you to move because you have to keep yourself not only safe from zombies, but safe from just, normal human needs. So I rush into the undercroft of this cathedral. I happen to find like a bunch of food. So I'm like, I'm way better now. But then like, apparently my presence alerts all the zombies that were up top who apparently died while they were worshiping and like came down. And now I'm in this like tunnel with only one way out with a bunch of zombies flooding in. I'm like, so I'm like just trying to kick my way out, like, get out of here, zombies, chopping off heads. I didn't make it, but it was a really fun experience. And I'm very excited to get to that point where I'm like, okay, I've got a base I know is safe that I've cleared out. Now I'm starting to like figure out how to make omelets instead of just eating eggs raw, starting to craft. And one of the other scenarios they told me about for like the end state for winning is like crafting your own carriage that you can escape town with.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, that's really cool. I'm really interested to see how do you get all the materials for that? How do you keep yourself safe? This is going to be a really fun time, and it's really accurate to like medieval life and what was existent at that time. So I loved it.
That's
Very
awesome.
cool.
Yeah, I didn't get to play that, but the alt history, historical accuracy stuff is always really fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And why not put zombies in it? Because of course.
Yeah.
Peasants versus zombies. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Awesome. I guess I'll jump into my next pick. And I have to preface by saying I apologize for almost screwing up our play session by picking a difficult class to play as. That said, I really enjoyed Keylocker. So Keylocker was a game that I saw was like Cyberpunk meets Undertale. And I was like, okay, I'm in. Whatever else is here, I'm in. And so we got to demo it. It was even more cool than I expected. You get a lot of customization for your character and the class you want to be. I, of course, picked a like Rockstar class. You're defense focused. So you have like a giant symbol you use as a shield. You have a guitar that you use to like buff yourself, but you can't actually attack. You can only attack on a counter with timed hits, which were tough to do just because of the audio, a loud convention center, not always easy to hear the audio.
But when you got it, it was really satisfying.
So
It really
satisfying.
was, yeah.
But it was exactly what I expected and then some. I think it definitely will have more customizations and unique paths than maybe a Deltarune or a Undertale does, but the vibes are definitely there. The style, you're like in the internet, you're an outlaw and you're trying to escape this place where you've been imprisoned and someone's helping you get out over the comms, as it were. And it was just really fun to play. I'd be more curious. It comes out, I believe, this month.
September 18th, yes.
Yeah. I'm curious once I have hands-on with it and can like play it at my pace, exactly how bad or good I am at it, but I was very bad at it during the demo. But it was a lot of fun. I really like this world they've built, and like I'm a sucker for indie games that have a 16 or 32-bit aesthetic that, you know, and this is isometric kind of combat setup. So I really dug it. It was a lot of fun. Sarah was much better at it than I was, though.
I feel like I'm sensing a theme.
Yeah, you're good at video games. We get it. We get it.
Also, you're usually the second one to go up to play the thing, so you watched us suck at it.
That's true, too.
It helps. It helps. I mean, one of the games we played at the Mix, Symphonia, Sarah did really well on it at playing it first, and I went on and I just got to look like a god because I knew what to do. But Keylocker was so fun. I first saw it in probably its first appearance in a PAX Rising at East, I want to say 2022. It was a little while ago, and they were very early days, but the aesthetic was there, the design was there. Your character is a musician, so no matter what class you pick, it is still a musical game. Those rhythm elements do play through, and there's something fun about the isometric turn-based combat also having a tactical aspect. It's not a full grid. You're not playing Fire Emblem, but there is location-based, how your attacks go, where you go, and part of using your turn is moving yourself into position. So playing with that kind of Chrono Trigger, Sea of Stars, like where you are does matter, but you do get a little more control over it. The palette is very secondary color, day glow, kind of awesome. The backgrounds are very, you know, you're in cyberspace, so we can just do whatever the fuck we want. And by gum, they do, and I love it.
I think for me, I picked Samurai as my thing, and it was a similar thing of like it's a defensive mode. Like it's always so hard when someone suggests like pick this because it's a little easier for the con, you know, and you're like, but I want to be a samurai. So
Yeah.
you just sit there, yeah, this is the results, the consequences of my hubris. And it's got a really cool turn-based but also real-time combat situation where you are trying to time your hits or counters to when the person is attacking you. And yeah, like you said, it is really cool when you actually get that timing correct. Getting that timing is a little harsh.
The satisfaction's nice to chase, though.
Yeah, I expected to do better just because I love games with times hit, like Mario and Luigi and Sea of Stars and all of that. And I was unprepared for how bad I was going to be at it. But it was still fun to play.
I did get to play a rhythm-based RPG called Away From Home on the last day, and that helped me feel a lot better. I didn't do perfectly first time out. They made it challenging, but I did better on that. So
You redeemed yourself.
I redeemed myself.
Exactly. Well, Geoff, what about your number 2?
My number 2, and also I do have to say that I'm the person who put together their top 3 after everyone else. So I'm like, let me find some of the wackier stuff. Like, I love everything we're talking about. So my number 2, I'm going to call out Draculeshti.
Ooh.
Oh, nice.
The Dracula dating sim visual novel. You play as Renfield, who's a lawyer visiting Castle Dracula. And as somebody who is on their second go-around reading Dracula daily, and just a big fan of Dracula, vampires, they nail the aesthetic. Knowledge of the property helps you, but this isn't a retelling of the novel. This isn't a, well, here's what happened before the book. It's not that. It plays with the world, though. There are your standard visual novel kind of choices, but there's ones that are bolder and ones that are a little more cowed and cowardly and noted as such amongst the choices. And there is, I was told, a little bit of a karma system to that, of how bold you are and how whatever else. And even in the game, it says, you know, new options open up if you go boldly in one direction or another. But there is the advantage to staying somewhere in the middle. And so my playthrough of the demo, the writing was fun. The art design was beautiful. That kind of thing where in hindsight you go, well, obviously it's this. I could not have designed this, but it can be no other way now. A lot of the choices and things made it was super easy to do. I often get analysis paralysis on these things, but even that little bit of sometimes the choice as the lion or the hare next to it helped me make a choice. Or sometimes I just went, what the hell is going on here? And sometimes it's, no, trust the count. We're all going to be fine here. Which, again, having that little bit of dramatic irony, you know, that idea of we read Dracula and go, how do these people not realize that Count Dracula is a vampire? Because they don't have vampire novels. This is just
Right.
shit that's happening to them. So why not lean into that? Why not have fun with that? It's an extremely queer telling of things, and I look forward to exploring that even more. There's non-binary options, there's trans characters. Gender holds no boundaries in terms of relationships, and I, for one, am extremely excited about that. The team was great. It was lovely chatting with them. We didn't get an interview. It was towards the end of the last day, and this was absolutely, I was in a fever dream state of things, so I probably read half the words and loved all the ones I read. I had a great time with it, and I will say, I did take a picture. I should post it. The sexiest press kit I've ever been handed. It makes a lot of sense to give media press kits on USB drives, and sometimes you get some fun little cards and things like that. I got my press kit in a black envelope with a wax seal, and there was an invitation in there. It was beautiful. For a game like this, design matters, and those choices go a long way.
Even the booth for this game, like the design choices were great. I took a picture of it because I wanted to remember. For most things at PAX, you have signage, you have like come play our game sort of situation. They had like a word board shaped like a coffin, and it read "Gay Dracula. Need we say more?" And I was like, "No,
I'm in.
you don't need to say more.
No.
That's perfect."
Yeah, the people who they want to play that game, that is all they need to be told. I was told, like, oh man, there were cosplayers there, but they weren't there the other day. I checked the pictures later. That was the development team.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's amazing.
They dressed up. I want to support these people. I want to support this game. We must be friends. This is so cool.
Amazing. Moving on to Sarah, what's the second game that you have that you want to talk about? As if I didn't know.
Yeah, I know. This one was really close to first place for me. This game, from the moment we got the press email about it, I said, oh, you made this for me. The game is Popucom. It's a co-op platformer with match 3 shooter vibes to it. Again, even saying shooter for folks who know me, it's not my usual type. No. This was amazing. It was basically It Takes Two meets Astrobot. The graphics were awesome. The puzzles were really fun with Puyo Pop mechanics because you have 2 colors and your co-op person has the other 2 colors. So there's different kinds of puzzles, right? You have a shield, so you have to help each other get past different areas. You have enemies you have to beat that you can only beat with one of your 2 colors. And then the boss was super fun because his health bar was based on how many bubbles he had in him, which means that if you fuck up and you shoot the wrong color bubble, you've now given him more health, which we did many times. Because the problem with the co-op shooter is that you're both shooting at the same time, and suddenly the green bubble's where the orange bubble was supposed to go, and well, now you just have to put a couple more in there. I was so excited to play this game. It absolutely delivered, and yeah, I had the best time.
I've started calling it in my head Ratchet and Clank's Mean Bean Machine.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Any chance we could get the developers on to make that change very quickly?
Right. When I played it, also aesthetically, it reminded me of Splatoon quite a bit because it had like colorful characters, chibi-looking characters, and there's an emphasis on color, but for a different reason. But yeah, I will say my experience playing with a complete stranger was still fun. We got it, and like we were, amicable and we were able to get through it, but it definitely would have been something that would be more fun with a friend. But I love the style and design. It also feels very like 3D Mario in a sense, like just the vibes of the worlds and the characters that you fight. Bums me out that it seems like it's co-op only. I imagine there must be a single player mode as well, maybe where you have all 4 colors, but I don't know. Or a computer partner.
They said that there's a 4-player mode coming where each person has 1 color, which actually is less interesting to me, believe it or not, because part of what was fun was I was pink and orange. I had to like switch between the 2 colors, make sure I was solving the puzzles. I think if I had to wait for 3 people to do their part, not just go, Geoff, use green, it would have been less fun.
Yeah, it looks really cool. If it has online multiplayer, then I would probably be more inclined to buy it. But if it's only local co-op, unfortunately, I'm less likely to buy it just based on...
That's fair. And I don't buy things with only online co-op because I'm either playing with Geoff or I'm not playing with anybody.
Right.
The Steam page does say online as well as shared split screen co-op.
Cool. So that could be fun to play online with someone, or actually that might make for a fun stream for me and Geoff to do when this game comes out, is play that together online and do very well because we'll be really coordinated and totally fine.
Yeah, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Jill, what is the second game that you have brought to talk about?
So I feel like this PAX, one of the major King of genres was precision platforming.
Easily,
Yeah.
yes.
Tons of them.
And I had played Croak after playing this game, and Croak felt so friendly and lovely after this. So I'm going to shout out Love Eternal.
Yeah.
This is the first time that this has been shown. I didn't even know what it was going to be. It was one of those situations where you get an email from PR and they're like, trust me, you want to check out this game, but we can't tell you what it is. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll go check out what it is. Love Eternal is a psychological horror precision platformer. And it's so much fun. Like from the narrative setup, where it's psychological in that it's like it's so relatable. It is a young woman and she's being called down to dinner and you're just having sort of like normal teenage I believe she's 13, 14
Yeah, I think so.
tensions with your family of like why aren't you being more respectful? Why are you like go take your side? Like that sort of thing. And then like blink of an eye, they're gone. Your house is like a bomb went off and everything is desolation around you and you're like what the heck, and you like walk out and all of a sudden you have these multiple precision platformer levels to deal with. They're full of sharp things, they're full of things that are going to kill you, they're full of lasers and spikes. And the cool thing about this is that you are also at the same time controlling gravity as your character.
Yeah.
And you have to play with that in order to get to the right thing. So this is definitely one of those situations where I would walk up to the entrance of this gauntlet and just sort of stare at it for a second and be like, okay, what am I supposed to be doing? And it's like, it's so funny when the only thing you have to do is like 3 jumps. But because you have to be upside down in gravity, your brain is just like, I can't freaking figure out. Sometimes you have to like jump into a deep well that's covered in spikes. So you have to like hit exactly in the middle and then reverse gravity to get out of it. So you're either going to fall to your death or you time it completely perfectly. And one of the best parts about this, any game where you are planning on dying a lot, and you are planning on dying a lot here, is that the action gets started again immediately.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you have no time to be frustrated. You have no time to like be upset or like to wait or to whatever. You're just like dead start, dead start, dead start. Every time I'd be like, no, I know I can get this timing. I see what I did. I'm going to do it. And that is such a good hallmark of a precision platformer because you're not frustrated. You know what you have to do. You're getting the timing correct. You never feel like it's your fault.
Yeah.
You feel a lot like, oh, that spike moved out of the place. Get it, you know, and you know exactly what you're supposed to do. It's not a confusing thing. The controls are so intuitive. You're immediately like, okay, I've got this. They start introducing, like any good game, complicated layers on layers, but it's very gradual. So it is very well tutorialized, even though there's no tutorial to it. Communication is fantastic, even though there's no dialogue telling the player exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And it is really creepy because at one point you've gone through like 20 minutes of puzzle. You're starting to like forget that this is kind of a horror game. And then in the middle of a puzzle, you go from like jumping and boom, you're back in your house and everything's kind of normal. And like a phone starts ringing, you're like, do I want to get that? Do I know what's happening? And then like there's your dad with a spider body. And you're like, what the fuck? Why? Why is this happening? And so I'm so intrigued to find out what's happening in this narrative. I actually asked the developer, because the game is called Love Eternal. So I'm like, okay, what is the love that is eternal? Who's the love? Is this a physical love? Is this a metaphysical thing? Is this a self-love? And he's like, I can't tell you. That would be a spoiler. I'm like, ooh, okay.
All right.
I really enjoy these kinds of games that have a narrative that I want to get back to.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. It's so minimal in its style.
Yeah.
It kind of almost looks like you could have done it in like paint,
Yeah.
but that makes it creepier somehow.
Yeah, it absolutely does. It's the weird amount of a lot of detail in one spot and very little otherwise.
Mhm.
The animation style reminds me of the old rotoscoped sort of pixel graphics like Karateka and Prince of Persia and all of those. And so you get this fluid smoothness of the movement, but you can't see anyone's face unless they show up in the dialogue box.
Yeah.
The gameplay has that sort of VVVVV kind of gravity flipping with a little bit of Celeste thrown in, but there is gravity and physics and sort of like wind up and momentum to how you move. And so, yeah, all those times you go into the spikes, you're like, I hit it at the right time. Did I? Because you kind of keep going for a second before gravity retakes you. And I love the fact that the psychological horror takes advantage of the flow state that precision platformers like this require of you. Like you were saying, Jill, you were playing it for 20 minutes. You almost forget that there's anything else to this game. You're just overcoming these challenges. You feel so good. And the timing of your impact of your feet on the ground turning back to the house is so jarring.
Yeah.
You could have shown a rotting corpse in my face and screamed at me, and it wouldn't have been quite as jarring and scary.
Yeah. I mean, and you talked about like your feet hitting the ground. It's so weird because like horror needs a very good audioscape
Yes.
to have an impact. But this game also has a really cool thing where you can hear your steps as you take off and you land, and they're slightly different.
Yep.
And that helps you with the platforming as well. But it's also just really creepy.
Yeah, no, they have a lot of cool space in the design where
Yeah.
your sprites are so small in the world you're traversing, certainly the puzzle platformer spots, versus the feeling of claustrophobia when you're in what is a standard size house, but compared to a game, it feels so small. The music and sounds, and there's reverb and echo to it. They have a lot of fun.
It was really cool to see in motion, understanding what it was and knowing that it was going to be this psychological horror precision platformer. I was curious how that's executed, and I think it was done masterfully. We have an interview with Toby towards the end of the episode as well about more details about the game, when we can expect it, its origins, and all of that. I'm excited to get my hands on this one because I think it's just so unique and is doing some really cool stuff with horror, a genre that I'm starting to explore more. All right, well, time for the number ones. Some of us have given weight to these orders, others have not, but either way, these are the last game that we're going to talk about. We'll do some kind of shout outs as well, I think, before we wrap up. But my number one game of show, if you've been following me literally anywhere on the internet, is no surprise. It was Mighty L's All Systems Dance.
Yeah.
We first heard wind of this at PAX East, and by we, I mean Geoff, who then relayed the message to me because I was not able to make that appointment, but have been chatting with the incredible Dave Proctor about it since. And of course, they shortly after that debuted the trailer for it. And I was really excited to get my hands on it, and I was not disappointed. This is basically an action platforming dance game. Originally, I think more emphasis on rhythm, but now rhythm is part of it, but it's not necessarily a rhythm game. You're using rhythm to time attacks, or dances, I guess, which are your attacks. It was incredible, from the design to the music, the style, all great. We're going to have an interview also at the end of the episode with Dave, who goes into more detail about this game. But what I loved about what I experienced was it's got all of the charm of the big con, but it still feels like it has its own identity. You look at these two games and go, okay, these are from the same developer. I can see the through line and style.
Their palette.
Yeah, but the All Systems Dance just feels wholly unique as its own thing. What I really love, which you only get a little bit of a sense from the demo, but that Dave told us, was this is not just a game about dancing and throwing over corporate robot overlords, which is important and good, but it's also an educational tool about dance, which I didn't realize. They hired dance consultants, and they really put in the details so when you unlock a dance, you know where that dance came from, what it's called, who made it famous, all things like that. Like Sarah said earlier, I like to learn things, and this game does that. It was great. I'm curious to see on a longer form what it looks like, but the snippet that we got was really great. I really love the design and the gameplay, and I'm kind of excited to just pirouette my way through a stage, constantly jumping. It's like the rolling around as Link in a 3D game, constantly rolling to traverse space. It's that, but with dives and jumps.
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to say about this game, Matt. When we first got the controls in our hands, I was like, oh no, we move so slowly. And then I figured out why. It's to encourage you to use these dance moves to traverse, to go fast. And then I had so much fun. Once you get more of the moves, you can mix them together. You can dance across the floor just to get from place to place. It was really fun.
Yeah, when I first saw it at PAX East, one of the inspirations that Dave cited was Tony Hawk Pro Skater. So that idea of using the dance moves for traversal and sort of stringing together the combos to help you move along, you can definitely see that. You can definitely feel that. The way that the traversal moves are for dealing with conflict as well as dealing with obstacles of just getting where you're going or just wanting to go fast enough. I love that kind of integration. And yeah, having the history of where the moves came from and understanding the dance as each their own thing is also its own kind of fun push against probably the homogenization angle of the robot overlord storyline that goes on. So I'm looking forward to seeing how those work together as well as the game goes on. It is in a very alpha stage playing through, but I was so excited by it. I'm delighted by it, and I cannot wait to see more of it.
We also didn't talk about the fact that the music slaps.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
As soon as I started hearing, I was dancing. I was playing and I was dancing the whole time. It was great.
And you are encouraged to, dance to the beat. It doesn't give you any bonus points or anything, but I don't know. I had fun.
Oh, I mean, my character was dancing, but me, Sarah, also was dancing.
Yes, you were.
I think I wouldn't trust anybody who played this game and didn't dance.
Yeah.
Instead of walking. Whoever chose to walk, I'd be like, no, that's probably a serial killer. So
You're a cop. Stop.
So I'm really excited to find out more about All Systems Dance. I believe Dave mentions this in the interview, but teasing a 2025 release at some point. This was enough for me to go, okay, whatever final form this takes, I'm in. Like, I can already see myself playing it on my Steam Deck, which is how I played the big con. So I'm excited for that.
Definitely.
Geoff, why don't you take a crack at your last game that you want to talk about? Get it? Sorry.
I'm rolling my eyes. You can't see it.
No, but I can feel it.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. Thanks. Yeah, my number one is Foul Damage, which is, again, we're talking about precision platformers, and, you have a seminal game that comes out, and it kind of becomes part of the conversation about the genre going forward. Why are Metroidvanias called that? Because Celeste is a game that absolutely influences precision platformer design going forward, and it's very funny to say that I don't think Foul Damage does. It is being put out by Red Nexus Games, the developers May Gardens, who worked on Peglin, which, again, I got over there and started chatting with them, and it's like, oh, yeah, no, our game is Peglin. I went, oh no.
I have played so much Peglin.
And I've played very little. I don't think I've actually played any, but that's because I didn't grow up playing Peggle. But Sarah plays so much Peglin that people have asked me my deep opinions on it because I put so many tens of hours into it. Clearly, I love it. But
we just share a Steam account.
We just share a Steam account. That's fine. That's neither here nor there. That's just a funny anecdote. Foul Damage is a precision platformer based around puzzles and falling.
Yeah, I would call it a puzzle platformer more than a precision platformer.
You're right. It's a puzzle platformer. Thank you. Because your character is a little egg with a smiley face that cannot survive too big of a fall because, if you've dropped an egg before, you know what happens. You splat, you crack, you break. The egg has a very high jump, and the jump is higher than your safe falling distance. You can't survive jumping and landing in the same spot. So what you have to do is jump to higher places that you can survive the smaller fall, roll to lower spots, or jump to something a little bit higher and from whence and where. It's on the puzzle side because in the same way that with Love Eternal, you kind of sit there for a second and you go, where do you want me to go? I need to plot this path before I start going at it. Foul Damage, you have to do the same thing. It has just as quick of you screwed up, try again, everything's fine. But you don't get any extra abilities. I was talking with May about it with the developer, and it's not like you get a double jump, you don't get a wall stick, you don't get whatever else, just the physics and the environment change around you. I love that at the very end of the demo, if you just explore a little bit, there's just a little bit of water in a spot. I was just rolling around and I went in there and how fast you move, how high you jump changes. It had nothing to do with any puzzles or anything else. It was just a nice preview of what the future stages might be like. This might be the first game where I'm kind of excited about trying ice physics because I don't know how that's going to work. And there are challenges that you don't have to be fast for and some that you do because there's a monster that's about to start attacking you and you have to keep rolling. So sometimes you can be methodical and sometimes, you just got to deal.
Yeah, it makes you feel really smart.
Yes.
When you get it, right? It's like really satisfying. Because again, back to what we were talking about, some of the other platformers, when you break the egg, nothing happens. You just go right back to the beginning of the level and you can try again. So it doesn't feel punishing in that way. And when you go, oh, that platform to this one, to this one, to this one, you get out of the level, you go, oh man, I got this.
Yeah, you do get that little bit of flow. It's really nice. It is also a game that's coming out very shortly. It's coming out September 13th. So maybe, when is this coming out? Is that today? I don't know. We're recording this on the 8th. So
soon.
So it's coming out very soon, and it will be a day one purchase for me, and I'm looking forward to being very, 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 very bad at it.
I'm looking forward to being better than Geoff at it.
Yes, obviously. Sarah, why don't you tell us about your last game that you brought to chat about?
Absolutely. So my game of the show, and I kept coming back to this over and over and over again, Feltopia. Talking about Croak being one of the most beautiful games you saw. Sure, it was. This is 10 times that, in my opinion. It is a hand-felted stop-motion video game. As a fiber artist, I was blown away. It looks absolutely beautiful. The gameplay was fun. It felt very easy to me. I think that part of that is the demo. It's a side-scrolling shooter. You are trying to save sheep. You can hold them to you so they don't get hit by stuff. And the boss was really fun. I really enjoyed the gameplay. I really enjoyed the visuals. The animator, Andrea Animates, did an incredible job. It looks so wonderful.
And it was so cool getting to see the felted models at the booth and just kind of go, that's what's in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is me. I'm that guy.
Yeah. Not even just seeing them have it on display, but then sitting immediately after and playing the game and seeing the bosses. Like it had backgrounds, but also like the giant raven that you're fighting against or crow or whatever it is. It was really entertaining. I didn't get to play it till the last day, but on Sarah's insistence that we go by the booth, I did fall in love with it. I love this idea. As of when we spoke to them, we're currently still looking for a publisher and like to figure out that next step. They want to hand felt this entire game. And not just the characters. We're talking the projectiles, the backgrounds, the bosses, the hero, all of it. It's not just like some felted animated things on a static background. Everything from toe to tip is hand felted, which is really impressive.
Yeah, this is one of those games that knew exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And they were just having so much fun with it. So it's like, okay, you're shooting out rainbow projectiles on your unicorn, going after sheep, and they're adorable. It was a lot of just joy to have coming at you.
Yes.
It was so good.
Well, last but not least, Jill, what is the last game that you would like to talk about? Not necessarily your number one, no pressure.
Not necessarily my number one, but it's going to be in that conversation, is called Omut.
Mm-hmm.
It's OMUT. Just to get a sense of this game, I actually want to read what they have on their Steam page. So prepare yourself. Picture this: a swirling red vortex and a talking house, beckoning you to its eerie embrace. At the heart of a dark, enigmatic forest, the place is both terrifying and somehow comforting, teeming with unearthly beings and guttural whispers that dance upon the wind. From this moment on, your destiny is sealed.
Ooh.
That's a good opening. I'm like, as a writer, I hate you guys. I can't write anything better than that. It was described to me as I sat down as a kind of fever dream. You're going to die a lot. It's going to have a narrative. The features here are, it says, again, Steam page.
Yep.
One hell of a fever dream narrative, a companion you probably shouldn't trust, upgrades that may not help you, and constant fighting to the deaths. Many, many deaths.
Wow.
It's like, that's exactly I didn't know what I was getting into when I sat down, but it is, again, another one of those, as soon as you die, they restart you. And I couldn't get myself to stop hitting the respawn button because I was just like, no, I know I got it this time. And I got to play several different bosses because they knew that people weren't going to get through the bosses in this particular run. Unlike Love Eternal, the narrative here is much more chaotic. Fever dream is such a great word for it. You don't know where you are. You don't have any sense of what's going on. The characters don't have anything relatable to them. It's so beautiful. The look of this game is like, imagine when you were a kid and you had like really old VHSs and it would just would have been very vibrant and beautiful at the time, but it's just aged so much that's kind of flickering and turns orange. It's that kind of look to it, which makes it very, very creepy. Like, it should be a lot more relatable, but also like really beautiful at the same time.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Steam page right now, and yeah, it's like got a CRT kind of feel.
Yeah.
Glow.
It's glow for days.
Yeah.
It's sort of I don't want to say Souls-like is not correct, but it's like that level of intensity. It is that level of, you're not going to win on your first boss fight. you're not going to win on your 5th boss fight. Like you're going to continue to try to do this. So the first one that I played was an enemy that falls from the ceiling, and you have to try to shoot them in a kind of like volleyball-esque, don't let the enemy touch the ground, because as soon as the enemy touches the ground, you're dead.
Ooh.
Of course, they keep like springing around, and you're trying to like shoot off the walls and like get all the angles in there, and they're getting more creative and like diving around your stuff and trying to like make you think they're going in a direction that you're not. And every time you fail, you're like, nope, I got this. I've got this. And it's so good. And it's like, I played that first boss for like 20 minutes and I'm like, no, I'm going to get it. And they're like, no, we really want you to check out the other things because, you only have so much time. So I went into the next one, which was more about dodging and like dashing through the enemy. And I was really good at dashing through. And after like a couple of minutes of that, just dashing, I wasn't dying. I was doing really good. But the person looked at me and was like, at some point, you're going to have to shoot them as well. Like, dang it.
Oh, jeez.
Dang it. I was doing so good dashing. And then as soon as I had to have another thing in there, I'm like, nope, I died.
Oh.
Yeah. So like there are just a lot of really cool concepts and they're really simple, but they're really hard. And then I think the last thing I saw was a sort of like Nexus area safe spot cave merchant sort of place. And I was just going through them like, I'm going to be a mushroom. This is going to be great. I'm going to have a little hat on my head. I'm going to have like silly boots. So like there is a very playfulness to it as well, which makes the scary, like not scary. Scary is not a really great word for this. It is just a little unnerving, perhaps unsettling. A little more unsettling because like I'm running around, I'm like, I've got a mushroom hat. I look kind of like a messed up toad. And then things are happening and you're just got words that are like, you can't leave, you're gonna die. Like, oh, okay, cool. I thought I was just wearing my mushroom hat and being fun, but whatever.
Fever dream.
Yeah, 100%.
This sounds awesome. Yeah, I looked up the
wow.
Steam page. I wish listed it. I don't even know what's going on. I don't think I care. I think that makes it more intriguing.
Yeah, I promise you that won't change once you play
Oh, good.
it. So.
Oh, good.
Excellent. Excellent.
Great. Good to know.
We talked about this the weekend at the con. It's been brought up here talking about this on the episode. Certainly for us, this PAX West has felt like one that is very much about the precision platformer or things like it.
Mm-hmm.
Something funny that has occurred to me while hearing you talk about this, Jill, and yes, I've also already wishlisted it because, oh my God, that's so cool. It's the fact that these are all games that are designed to challenge you and support you in that endeavor. They say you will fail, and that is not because you are bad, but because you are playing the game and because you are engaging and enjoying it. And I think there's a lot of genres of game or schools of thought on it that are of get good variety, I suppose, that the idea feels like it should be that, but I don't feel that kind of almost love. This is love through killing you over and over again. Or love through throwing yourself at hazards over and over again.
Yeah.
And there's something cool in that.
Yeah, I'm reminded of when I played Tethergeist, and it's a puzzle precision platformer where you have different kinds of mushrooms that let you interact with different kinds of enemies in the stage. I just sat there going, I can do this. I know I can do this. I understand what I'm supposed to do. I just have to get it. And then I decided, I'm going to try something crazy, something different. And then I got it on the first try and was like, well, there we go. I did get it.
That was a really good game. That was the game, like we talked about earlier, how when you meet people, it's one of the first things, like, what are you playing? Like, that was the thing I was sending people to because I had not heard anything about this game. This was not a game that I'd gotten an email about. This was not a game that I'd seen in another show. So I was immediately like, go play Tethergeist because I want people to know more about this. And I haven't heard about it. And being indie focused, a lot of the time the things that I think people have heard about are still under the radar.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if I haven't heard about it, it's not out there, So
yeah, and more should hear about it. Absolutely. It was great.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I heard about Tears of Metal, is like tons of folks after playing it were like, you have to go try this game. And I finally did it on the last day. And it's basically a hack and slash game, Muso kind of game meets a roguelike. But it's not the overwhelming forces that like most Muso games are. It's like small armies, battle to battle, bosses. And it was a lot of fun. It was really interesting. The character design really stood out. It was like both cartoony, but also really gritty in a way that looked really interesting.
Yeah, like comic book.
Yeah.
Also, you play as the Scottish attacking the English.
Yeah.
That appeals.
Yes, for sure. In the final release, there'll be like 4 characters to choose from, not just the one, which is interesting. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's tons of games like that. I think word of mouth is what makes these shows fun. For example, the Fun and Games crew will sometimes go place to place together, and we'll like check out games together, and then we'll all go, well, we've got an appointment and you're going to go do that. We split up and then come back and like, oh my God, did you see this? And like share the stuff that we saw as we went our separate ways. And I love that this con encourages that, and that the show floor, especially the indie side, has so much cool stuff. I mean, you know, there was some cool AAA stuff. We did all get to play Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, which was as great as we expected. I played Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, which is a return to the Budokai series, which I loved growing up. And there's other giant setups, like they had a whole Five Nights at Freddy's section. And like, I feel like that PAX more than anything else has something for everybody. And a lot of the word of mouth promotion for those things, Five Nights at Freddy's doesn't need any word of mouth. People know what that is. Even if you've never played one of those games, you know what that is.
Pretty much.
But like, I think it's just a cool community space where you can engage in the stuff that's really well known that you just want to check out, or the smaller stuff that no one's ever heard of. And you could be that person's first player to check out that game and talk to them about it. And I like both levels of it, that it's a place for both things.
And speaking about spreading the love, I do just want to shout out a couple of them, even though I wasn't able to like put them in my top 3. Like y'all would know in the background, I was like in our text messaging being like, I can't narrow it down to 3, you guys. I'm barely narrowing it down to 8. So I just want to shout out Winterboro. It's already got a demo out, so go play that. It's fantastic. Ever Deeper Aurora, a game that more people should be talking about. It's been out there for a while. Oh, so good. I also want to shout out, we already talked about Tethergeist, so go check that out. Outrider Mako is a game that I have had on my list for a little bit, but I played it once as a demo, but I don't think it was in English. So I was just sort of trying to figure out what I was up to. This is a kind of Spirited Away situation where a young child has fallen into a well and is now in the employ of spirits doing deliveries. And then Tears of Metal, also high up on that list. So all of those things you should go check out, and more, because I played so much more.
Yeah.
But I want to add in Symphonia as well. I know we briefly mentioned it at one point.
Yeah.
That's another excellent platform we had a lot of fun with. Music design, musical stories and stylings too. It was very cool. I had a lot of fun at the Tokyo Indies booth. I didn't get to play everything, but 2 in particular that stood out to me were Telebit, which is a portmanteau of Teleport and Rabbit, that is the best 8-bit adaptation of Portal mechanics in a side-scrolling game I've ever played, as well as playing Doranko Wanko, which...
Oh God, it was so funny watching you play that.
I had so much joy, and it's free, and it's out now. But it's a game where you're a little Pomeranian in a very nice house who's just very dirty. And the whole point is get everything dirty. You're scored in how many dollars of damage you're doing, and you unlock achievements. I don't think it's a very long play experience. You're probably going to get done and get everything in like 2 or 3 hours, but I'm getting it, and I'm going to do that. I love the fact that this was my first PAX where I got to play Mina the Hollower. I knew I was going to love it, and I was so not disappointed. It was incredible. I'm looking forward to doing more with it. One of the other games that I played at the Mix I really liked was Chain Staff, which just felt like a heavy metal cover meets Sega Genesis action platforming.
Awesome. I'll shout out a couple more. Also, On Your Tail, which is a mix of like a cozy game and detective game, which was really interesting. Shout out to Luke Lewis, who was repping it for Vicarious. Sulfur, I got to play, which was the talk of the show, which was like a cartoony style first-person roguelike shooter. It was really interesting, the unique game design. It reminds me a lot aesthetically of like Gunbrella, just like a weird little world where you're kind of fighting your way through it. Of course, Anton Blast, if you've been listening to this podcast for any amount of time, you know Geoff and I are endlessly excited for that.
Absolutely.
I finally got hands-on with it at the Mix and really loved it, even though I'm a backer and could have played the backer demo at any time, but here we are. And then we played some cool board games like Sonic Speed Battle and Luffy's Bento Panic, both of which were a lot of fun. And even if you don't know the properties, like I barely know One Piece, still really enjoyed the Luffy game. And so those were from Kess, who are constant partners of ours.
Great adaptations of all sorts of properties and shows, games that you love. They're good games, and they use the license well. They actually integrate the things you know of the characters into it. So much like with Bento Panic, most of us at that table had either no to maybe passing knowledge of One Piece with like one super fan, and all of us had a lot of fun playing it, and what you knew of the property informed and enhanced. And so Kess is amazing for that.
Yeah, I would compare it to like Fantasy Flight if you've played any themed board games by Fantasy Flight, which are much larger scale. But like you don't need to know the property to enjoy those games because they're mechanically made so well. Kess is doing that very much for like smaller kind of bite-sized games and have been a blast to engage with.
Yeah, we're hoping to talk with them more at PAX Unplugged.
Yep. But that's going to be it, I think, for our PAX West special. We love going to these shows. Thank you, first and foremost, to, of course, all our listeners and patrons who allow us to do things like that. But before we wrap up the show totally, Jill Grodt, the Indie Informer.
That's me.
That's you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being excited to be a part of this. We love having you on the show. It was great to hang out with you in person in Seattle.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. Please tell folks where they can find you and your work online and the best way to check out and support it.
You can go check everything out at theindieinformer.com. Nice and simple and easy, I hope. You can find us on the Twitters at indie_informer because the Indie Informer is just one letter too long. You can follow me personally at Finruin, FINRUIN. I also do a podcast with a bunch of other indie content creators called the Indie Council, and we are going to be counseling about PAX and everything, so you can hear a lot more about some of perhaps the indies you didn't get to hear about today. If you want to support on Patreon, that'd be great. Patreon/the Indie Informer, because I just have, as I stated, I think earlier, a couple of more people that are writing for us now, and I would like to be able to pay them as much as possible.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Thank you again for joining us. Sarah, any parting words before you leave us? I know you don't exist on the internet.
I don't, but no, this has been awesome, and PAX was a blast.
Yes, we could literally not do what we did without you there, especially eat lunch. We ate lunch because of you, and I'm grateful.
Yeah, no, I don't do well with no food, so I force everybody else to eat.
Oh, yes.
Yes, to clarify, Sarah helped manage our calendar and timeline, and she left lunch breaks. Otherwise, Matt and or I would have scheduled interviews the entire time or just not left the floor. And several folks in the group chat benefited from the knowledge that, well, we have a lunch break put in.
Look, y'all can be feral gremlins whenever you want. That's not my life.
And
so.
I do!
Well, listeners, thanks for being here. If you were at PAX, let us know what you saw. Maybe there's games we didn't talk about that you really liked. We'd love to hear about it. If you weren't at PAX, did you enjoy this? What kind of coverage would you like us to do at these kinds of live events? If there's certain things you want us to keep an eye out for or things you're excited about in the future, we will be likely at PAX Unplugged. So if there are any board games that you have heard of, video game or otherwise, that you would love for us to check out, let us know. We always love to hear your thoughts on this stuff as well.
Yeah, the games that intrigue you, the games that you want to hear more about. Did any of the 12 games that the four of us brought, do you want to hear more about those? Do you want us to bring developers on to talk to them about these games? Because, twist our arm about that. If there's any of the interviews that we have done that are at the end of this episode that you want to hear more about, well, please let us know. Any and all of this. Get in touch with us. There's so many great ways to reach out. We are Fun and Games Pod across all social media that we are currently active on, which as of this episode is Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Tumblr. We are funandgamespod@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought of this episode, what you thought of previous episodes, what you'd like us to talk about, who you'd like us to talk with in future episodes. Show us pictures from your visiting of PAX, whether it was PAX West this year or previous PAXs you've gone to. Send us pictures of your video game collection. I'm going to say it every time. No one's done it yet. And I'm not disappointed. I just really want to know. If you like our content, if you like what we're doing and you want to support us and help us out so that we can do even crazier things when we go to conventions, you can visit our Patreon, patreon.com/funandgamespod. There are several tiers of support. There is a free tier, so you don't have to donate any money, but you can also get to see everything we're working on. It's kind of a one-stop shop there. But we so appreciate everyone that has been supporting us, and we especially want to shout out those at the high score tier and above, because this episode, the high scoreboard is Alex Lavelle, Case Aiken, Daniel Needon, Roger Reichart, Alejandro Alves, Curly Bright, Film It Yourself, Patrick Edwards, Robert Prine, Sean Bowen, and Wes Bates. Thank you so much for your support. Please enter your initials. The floor will close in about 15 minutes, so please finish up your demos and please make your way towards the door because they say 15 minutes, but they're already going to start kicking you out now. I'm really sorry about that. Even though we've been kicked off of the convention floor, if you want to continue the conversation, you can also go to certainpov.com and find not only other fantastic podcasts from our network, but a permanent invite link to our Discord server, where a lot of these comments, conversations, and pictures are still going on, and where a lot of the topics that we end up talking about originally start from. So it's a great spot to be, and we'd love to see you there.
Also, if you don't have the extra scratch to throw money at us, totally get it. A free way that you can really support us is by going to your podcast platform of choice and rating and reviewing us, giving us 5 stars, because I like to think we're a 5-star podcast. I guess you could tell me otherwise if you so choose, but please don't. We're fragile.
I don't like to think that. I just have to deal with the fact that we're a 5-star podcast. So
Just a burden.
Just a burden. Help us, please.
We really appreciate it that way when folks start searching on, say, Apple Podcasts for PAX West 2024. We will rise to the top if we have a ton of rating and reviews. It is one of the freest and easiest ways to support this show.
Whether through Patreon, whether continuing to chat with us on Discord, reaching out across anything that we've said, whether checking out some of Jill's fantastic reviews, articles, and content throughout, whether saying hey to us whenever you see us at a convention, or just listening to this episode. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your support. We couldn't do this without you. This is a conversation. Thank you for being a part of it. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I am Maddie K. Stormageddon.
Enjoy the interviews, and happy gaming. Hi there, everybody. We're at PAX West 2024. Matt and I just got finished playing All Systems Dance, the upcoming dance, traversal, just delightful goddamn musical title from Mighty Yell. And we're here with Dave Proctor, who's been on the show, and I don't know if we'll ever stop having him on the show. Dave,
no, you'll have to, as I said before, you'll have to kick me off.
That's fair. That's fair. The challenge accepted.
We're so happy to have you here, Dave. You showed Geoff this behind closed doors back at East of 2024. I wasn't able to make it. I had to leave. And then Geoff immediately after was like, Matt, oh my God. Oh my God, Matt.
You missed
I don't know if you know this about us, but we're rhythm game sickos.
Yeah.
How does it feel now from then to now, having announced it and now people getting hands on it? Like, how does it feel to finally get this out in the world?
Yeah, I guess like we weren't even announced at East, right? So that feels like 10 years ago.
Yes, it does.
This whole month making this demo feels like 10 years because the team was working really hard to make it shine. And I think it's paying off. The announcement was great. I love the pickup that we got. Our marketing team's absolutely crushing it. But like also watching people play it with no knowledge of the game at all right here is like something completely different. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, and given that the game is one that is a lot more conflict-driven than, say, something like the Big Con was, but still is one that, if I remember correctly, your ethos is very much like you don't need to be making violent games, and this is more about joy and enjoyment first.
Yeah.
Has that been connecting with people as well?
Yeah, for sure. Like, yeah, we make non-violent games or I think it's probably better to say things like non-combat games.
Yeah.
Our characters can exist in a world where violence is real, but they don't have to be the ones perpetrating it, right?
Yeah.
So in this case, people are liking the fact that they're using dance as a core verb. Like you're using dance moves to dodge, to parry, to move out of the way of these corporate robots that are becoming very excited with the fact that you're dancing. And unfortunately, their excitement leads to telegraph damage zones and bonking into you. We're not here to make you, like, I'll gate progression behind these battles, but I don't want you to feel like you've lost all your time, you know? Like you're always kind of growing and trying something new in our games.
Yeah, there's dodge and parry, but this isn't a Souls-like.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it already has some aesthetic similarities to the Big Con. These kind of vibey 90s bright colors.
Yeah.
Was that always kind of like is kind of the through line, like this high-res kind of stylistic design for the characters?
Yeah, I mean, our art director Saffron has like a really good sense of like what pops, what looks good, and I am very eager to let her do what she thinks is correct and interesting. We started by designing the robots. What does tech look like in this universe? We went really into like early 2000s blobby, blue translucent, you know, everybody is like an iMac.
Yeah. I was actually going to say that the graphics on this for me are very Dreamcast coded, which
Yes.
again, late 90s, early aughts.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of the style of a game and, well, a rhythm game, a music game, a dance game, what has the music journey been for All Systems Dance thus far?
We were looking at, you know, I mean, Jet Set's a good starting point for us. Like we were looking at kind of like future hip hop, a little bit of techno, like a little bit of, I don't even have the language for it, right? The tune that you heard in this demo is an incredibly like grindy French house dance thing, and that's not a problem for me. Dan, our composer, who I've worked with on everything all the way back to like when I did Runbow at my old company, we always just kind of riff on what would be cool, and then he always finds a great palette, and then I'm like, just make everything like a little bit more distorted, and you're good. Like, I like a little bit of dirt on everything, but he's a genius. And what we're trying to do is make different kind of musical palettes for every area, but have those seamlessly transition into and out of battle so that you're kind of just like flowing with the character into and out of these dance moments.
So now, how does it feel to have revived the dab, brought it back to popularity?
Dab never died.
And
You're just
also,
a coward.
like, do you have favorite dance moves already? Like in the demo, you start out with like one, and then for the next battle, you're like, what if we gave you 20 more?
Yeah, exactly.
Just
right?
so you can like play around with it.
Yeah.
That's what we wanted to do.
But do you have a favorite dance move that you've incorporated?
I got a couple. I'm going to answer a few of your questions in order. One, I can't say that we revived the dab. And actually, when you unlock dance moves in our game, because of the great work that we had from our dance consultants, we're going to actually teach you about the history of these moves.
Amazing.
So you're going to find out where the dab originated from. You're going to find out like what a jeté is and what a Bismarcky is and, you know, what a windmill is for and all this stuff. And it's like been really important to us to like learn the culture and the roots of these moves because, you know, we are just the last in a long line of people to try to bring them out to the world. My favorite dance move in the full game, we have a very slow, it's called a helicopter roll, and it is a contemporary roll move. Carla lands on her back and like slowly moves her legs over her head. It takes like 6 seconds. It's the longest move in the game, and because the game is about avoiding these robots from hitting you, it is the highest scoring move in the game because it's the riskiest move to do.
Right.
Like if points reward at the end of the move, you have to cancel out of it if you're about to get hit. I just think it's like mechanically really fun, and it looks dope.
Yeah, well, and a lot of the gameplay, like you were saying, like highest scoring, the risk, and everything else, because this is a musical game, everything has a beat to it. And we were talking about this before recording, but I'm just getting this on the record. There is something great about how the moves score more when you are on beat, when you're following the music, but you're not penalized if you don't have it on beat.
Correct. It's going to be interesting watching how we talk about this over the next few months because it's hard not to be lumped together with other rhythm games, but like it's not really a rhythm game. It's just a game where rhythm is a component to it. It's a score mechanic.
It's selling style.
This is a game about style, yeah. So if you want to like dance off beat, I think it's totally fine. It's just like we have like a little charge system of, you know, if you perform a move on beat 4 times in a row, that's the max you can get in terms of rhythm multiplier.
My final question before we wrap up is, what is it like to have created Gaming's next cute little guy in Adbert?
Adbert is gaming's next cute little guy, number one little guy of 2025. I'm really excited. Look, I'm not going to lie to you. We're like, when are we doing the Adbert plushie?
Right, like
When
that's
is
got to
this
be the top of
happening?
your list.
He's
like,
the best. I want everyone to love this little ad machine that you eventually like break into something that is less nefarious, and he means a lot to us.
Absolutely. Well, All Systems Dance looks like it is well into excellent development. You were saying that probably like 2025 is close.
2025 for sure. I'll just say a casual bet that it's the earlier rather than later, but we're not going to quote me on anything.
That's fine. Our listeners know that this isn't the last they're hearing from us about the game or from you in general, and so as that gets closer, everyone's going to get to hear about that more.
Yeah.
So
we'll have news for you soon.
Yeah, we're just real excited about it. So
Yeah.
Thank you
Dave,
so much.
Thank you so much for taking the time to share the game with us and with our listeners. And
Always got time for you.
we are chatting with Tony and Abby from Black Tabby Games.
Yes, you are.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for
Glad to
having
be here.
us.
This feels like a full circle moment for me because at PAX East a year and a half ago, I played Slay the Princess on the floor in the PAX Rising booth for the first time, became obsessed with it, and then told my co-host that it was our game of the show for Fun and Games on the way home, and I was like, here's the demo, it's on Steam, play it, please.
Thank you.
We still have that little plaque.
We do. Thank you.
Now the game has been released, and not only has it been released, but you guys are doing the Pristine cut, which adds stuff to the game.
So much
and
stuff.
It also has a console release. I know that you guys had always planned for it to come to Steam, and the consoles was the dream.
Yeah.
And now we're here.
Yeah.
Was it a tough process to go from just the PC release to the console? Were there a lot of changes that you had to make, or was it pretty streamlined?
Well, the great thing is that we're working with a publisher on the console side of things, so we don't know.
Yeah, they're the ones who have to deal with that. That's why we're very happy to have signed with them because they're doing, I think, a very good job.
I assume because our game is written in RunPy, which is a notoriously irritating to port language, that the process was awful.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's the best kind of
That's
answer.
exactly.
Yay!
Yeah.
Everyone wants their game to be a hit people to talk about it. But that I felt like that PAX East last year, like not just me, but a lot of my friends and even folks I didn't know were talking about it on the trip home. What did that feel like to have your game kind of explode that way at the end of that convention?
It was unbelievable, honestly. Like, we did not expect that to happen at all. And as it was kind of unfolding throughout the course of the convention, we just kept turning to each other and saying, I think people might like it. Maybe.
Yeah, no, it was surreal once all of the tweets and then articles started rolling in. I think we were really, really fortunate that we had a good location and really great voice actors who could draw a crowd when people were playing it.
And the fact that the demo isn't the same every time, of course,
Right.
because of the nature
Yeah.
of the game, it meant that a lot of people wound up hanging out just to see how different the playthroughs could get. So
Amazing. So now we have the Pristine cut. It adds additional endings and,
Yep.
and princesses and all of that.
after the initial success, I think we actually did a Reddit AMA and a bunch of people were asking us about DLC, and we were like, oh, of course not. The game is done.
The game's
But
done.
then we turned to each other and we're like, oh, but you know, there are those princesses who don't have their own unique Chapter 3.
Yeah.
So we said, well, what if we just thought about it for a little bit? And then like a week later, we'd come up with 35% more games. So
Yeah, I think something unique to Slay the Princess is the entire development cycle was such a scramble where it was like we went from initial concept to finished demo in 2 weeks. And then
Wow.
the entire game was like 7 months of full-time work. So really like the entire development process was this frenetic, dreamlike process that mirrors the feeling of the game. And I think that added a lot to it. But we didn't really have an opportunity to let it sink into our bones and think like, okay, well, what are the areas where if we had more time, now that we know what we've made better, that we could really flesh out. So it was like, once we had a couple weeks to not work 12 to 16 hours a day,
just to make sure we got the actual
yeah.
thing done. Yeah.
the ideas started rolling in. And originally, like, we were just going to extend the 3 routes that were getting extensions by a small amount, push a patch out in December and call it quits. And then it just became, okay, but like, what if this? What if this? What if we really took our time and did it justice?
It was kind of a process of refining, making sure that people understood what their impact actually was on the narrative instead of we do things to the princess and random things happen after that. We don't want it to ever feel like random things happened. It wants to, like, we want it to make it feel like this is a natural progression of events. You are controlling in some capacity how she looks and what she does.
So everyone has a favorite princess. I know my favorite, and a lot of favorites, was the tower. For
Yay.
obvious mommy reasons.
That's actually not as common as you would think.
Really?
Yeah, people are
She's
pathetic.
one of the least.
And they're like,
really
how
popular
dare a
ones.
woman boss me around? And I'm like, what's
That's all
wrong
I
with
want
you?
from my life.
Yeah.
People want a dominant woman until she actually steps on them.
It's
Yeah.
true.
And then
true.
it's not
You're
fun
like,
in
"No,
games
stop
anymore.
it."
Heaven forbid an eldritch abomination do anything.
Right?
But do you have one that was like maybe the most fun to write or the hardest to write for? Like one that really stands out in a certain way to you when creating them?
The best princess is the new Damsel Chapter 3.
Ooh, I like that.
I think it's probably unequivocally true that, yeah, that's the case. I think my tops now are the Fury #1, Apotheosis, the new stuff for both of them,
Right.
and the Wraith. I just like when people are really scary. And
Yeah.
huge,
Well, it's so funny that the game can go. Like, I'm new to horror games. I've played a lot more of them over the last few years. But, like, this game takes such a hard shift on it. It can be comedic. It can be horrifying. And the first time I got the one with the masquerade mask, the ghost.
The Nightmare.
Yeah,
The
the
nightmare.
Yeah.
First time I got that and she, like, crawled, I was like, oh, no, this is bad.
Yay.
I've made a
Yeah.
mistake.
I love her. She used to be one of my tops. I think she's still pretty high up there. She's in my top 5 for sure.
Yeah.
But she's fun. She's also scary.
So, okay, what is funny with the Damsel, though, is like that a lot of people are like, oh, it's like the soft, not horror thing. It's like, you do watch her
Cut her
bite
own hand
her
off.
own
Oh, yeah.
arm off
Off.
to get there.
That's
And
true.
it's
I
like,
forget
We've all been there.
all been there.
You just get a little hungry sometimes.
Yeah, universal experience,
Yeah.
totally.
Before we wrap up, I guess my next question, and the answer can be I have no idea, but obviously Slay the Princess has been a huge success. You guys, it's not your first rodeo. Do you have ideas percolating for what's next? Do you want to continue Slay the Princess? Do you want to go somewhere else?
Slay the Princess is done.
Yeah.
Next up, we're finishing Scarlet Hollow. We have 3 episodes left for that. Then after that, Abby is.
I have to return to The Last Halloween. It is my webcomic.
Yeah.
I will be finishing that. I am on book 2 of 3, and it will
Cool.
be done.
Book 3 is so good, too. And then after that, we have a concept for a third game that we
Cool.
really like.
We keep sending each other Discord messages every now and then, even though we're in the middle of all of these other things, saying, okay,
But what if we
thing
did this?
For game 3, let's write this down.
It never stops. It never stops.
It never does.
That's awesome. I couldn't be happier about the success of Slay the Princess, being stoked for the Pristine cut. Now, the real question is, when can we buy Slay the Princess plushies and dolls and action figures?
Perhaps
There's
soon.
maybe
Ooh.
some things coming down the pipe soon.
Perhaps we do.
We have many, at this point, unannounced merch items, and they're like all bangers. Like
Yeah.
every single one is a banger.
Cool. Well, thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
We are chatting with Toby from brlka. You're the lead developer, one of the lead designers on Love Eternal, which is a side-scrolling retro platformer with horror elements. Where did the inspiration for a narrative horror platformer come from?
It's a good question. So about 11 years ago, I started developing a freeware platformer that was just called Love. A really bare-bones massacre platformer that was really difficult. It was like, true freaks only.
Yeah.
So I wrapped that up. I released that. Then, like, a few years later, I'd quit my job, and I decided I wanted to take a stab at making, like, a game proper, commercial title. And I felt like, having had some distance from it, that original game, Love, was, like, a really good foundation to build on. So I started from that, and that was, like, purely mechanical, just the sort of foundations of the running and jumping. And I knew I wanted some sort of narrative, so psychological horror that's less like in-your-face jump scare and more sort of growing sense of unease, which seemed like a unique mixture, something I could be enthusiastic about. So that's sort of the direction things went initially.
The jump scares and the unsettling aspects of Love Eternal really lend itself well towards the precision platformer, the massacre. Those are genres that encourage focus and getting into the zone and everything else. And so even the slightest break of that and shift of that has massive payoff.
I knew it was really important for me that the like story beats and sort of narrative moments be seamlessly integrated into the game. So you probably saw from the demo, but it's like the game doesn't fade to black and then, a cutscene plays.
No.
A story moment could happen at any time because you're sort of just walking along playing the game and then suddenly you're somewhere else or a character is there that you didn't expect to be there.
You're somewhere familiar, but it's not familiar anymore.
Yeah, and the gameplay loop of these really tight attempt-retry cycles is sort of hypnotic, and it lulls you into this state of intense focus, and then to be jumped out of that in a way that's maybe not necessarily like screaming in your face jump scare, that was definitely something I was aiming for, and I think like a strength I was able to lean into because of the way I'd set up the game.
The game starts with you in your bedroom, and there's no music. And it's not until you start doing the platforming stuff that the music comes in. Geoff and I often laud games like Metroid and others that have that more psychological horror bent using silence.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I would just say, in general, the sound design was like really huge for me. I think it's sort of an often underutilized aspect of games, especially indie games. I did the entirety of the sound design for the game. And then my friend Emily Glass did the music for the game. And she obviously knocked it out of the park.
Very much so, yeah.
Really killed it. And the combination of the two, I think I was really trying to go for something that was unsettling. And also, I think, sort of the track record of this genre of sort of massacre game, the music tends to be very sort of like high energy, hyper. But, I never felt like that really matched the mental state those sorts of games put me in, which was sort of more that like meditative trance state. So I sort of wanted to go for something that was less abrasive, high energy, more sort of like lulling you into that state of focus.
And I almost think of it as well as sort of impressionistic, which I think also meshes well with the art direction that we saw here. The way that everybody moved, I was reminded of older style rotoscope graphics. I was reminded of Another World in particular.
Yeah, totally. And, I think we were trying to do something unique with the art where it's not traditional pixel art in the sense that, you have these really defined hard-edged sprites, but it was more like we were doing something painterly with that sort of single pixel hardline tool that I think produces a really interesting, unique look for the game.
Yeah, the movements of the characters are far more defined than you would think of, even though you're not necessarily seeing the lines of those limbs or their face as it happens.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, the character designs are really stark. Like the player character has big flowing white hair. Was part of that design also because it like moves when you jump? Because a big mechanic is reverse gravity. Does the design influence the mechanics and vice versa?
Yeah, I mean, the physics of the game came first. The character design, a big part of it is simply like visibility, being able to track the character moving on the screen. The animation contributes a ton to how the character feels to control. Like there's all these sort of subtle details that we put in, like when the character stops, she doesn't immediately freeze frame, but there's kind of a little animation of her residual acceleration. That sort of thing, the squash and stretch of the jump, I think all of that adds a ton to how the game feels to play.
I'm curious with a game like this, we mentioned a lot of Master Core platformers, and a lot of those are based on difficulty and meant to have like this hard difficulty. The checkpoints are very generous. You have multiple checkpoints sometimes in the same room, depending on the size of the room and stuff. When I played it, I'm not great at these kinds of games, but I never failed. It felt like it was the game punishing me. It always felt like, oh, I didn't do that quite right. The lead character has this kind of float when you flip gravity, and they kind of arc. And the first couple of times I tried to flip, like on a jump, I would hit the spikes and like I couldn't get it. But after I kind of understood the kind of curve of the arc, it was much easier to navigate and control.
Yeah, I mean, I think the earliest prototype of this sort of movement I made was in like high school. So that would have been 2013 or something. And it was basically identical to what you see now. So it was sort of about creating these sine wave type of motions to navigate these claustrophobic spaces.
Well, it feels very cool to do. And I believe when we talked about this before recording, it's expected to be about a 5 to 6 hour experience.
Yeah, around then. Obviously, it depends how skilled you are at these types of games, but I would say for the average player, it'll be around that.
Of course.
Cool.
So when is the expected release date and expected platforms to release too?
It's going to be out in 2025. I haven't pinned down the exact date, but somewhere in there. And it'll be out on all major consoles and Steam.
Amazing.
Fantastic. Well, Toby, thank you so much for taking the time to share Love Eternal with us. We are both looking forward to its release. When there's a date, we'll let our listeners know even more about it because this was a lot of fun. I'm on board here. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us.
Yeah, thanks. Really appreciate it.
I'm chatting with Nick and Adam about Spray Paint Simulator. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you very much for, it's good to be here.
This is the latest game being published by the awesome folks at Whitethorn Games. Talk a little bit about where the inspiration for Spray Paint Simulator came from.
Okay, so we've been in the game industry for quite a while. Last part we worked on was Lawn Mowing Simulator. So we worked on that. We'd seen Power Wash Simulator at the same time. We'd seen other games like House Flipper. We played through those. And I'd also been watching a lot of oddly satisfying videos, pressure washing, spray painting, and some of the view figures on those are just astronomical. So it was like, it just clicked and you went, that would be a great idea. Let's try that. And we did a demo, tried some prototypes, worked really well, and that's how it was born.
Are you both fans of the simulator genre? Have you played a lot of those games and that led to this?
You have to research the genre you're in, play a lot of those games and try and get as familiar as you can with those games. I would say I wasn't necessarily a big simulator fan before working on simulators, but you play something like Power Wash and at first you think, what is this? And then it's very chilled. You chill out and you can spend hours just doing things like listening to podcasts while cleaning things. And yeah, it's cool. I wouldn't say I was previously a huge fan, but I'm definitely a fan of simulators now, yes.
Yeah, I think it's the same for me as well.
Most simulator games, I haven't done whatever it is we're simulating. I live in New York City. I don't have a lawn. I don't mow lawns. I don't have anything to power wash, but I have done a lot of painting and just even the little bit of masking and taping and everything else to this, I can connect to that, and I'm really happy that I don't have to clean it up in real life. And
that's one of the benefits, isn't it, of
pure satisfaction.
Video games.
Pure satisfaction.
Yeah, pure satisfaction.
It's actually, I'm glad Geoff brings that up. So this is obviously based on spray painting. Do you both have experience actually physically spray painting? If not, did you have to do like research to know like terms and gear and like the different sprayers and all of that stuff?
Well, funny you should say that. Yes, I did. We did actually buy. Well, Adam bought one first, portable paint spray, and I bought one.
Yeah.
And
we bought the equipment.
Yeah, I bought the equipment. I actually did our. Our bathroom was being redone, so we had units, but we didn't like the colour that we bought them in. So we bought the. So I got this, and I was spray painted all of that as well. So yeah.
How much trouble did you get in with the spray painters that you brought?
I was all right actually, not too bad. I kept it quite clean, with the masked everything. Because good practice.
Great practice.
Yeah. So masked everything, but yeah, no, the finish was pretty good. I thought it worked quite well. The trouble with doing it in real life, though, is like you say, you can get messy, getting the mix right, all of that kind of thing, because the consistency was tricky. It's like with games. Over the years, I've worked on loads of different titles. You kind of have to throw yourself into that research and find out about those things.
Have you had to kind of go, well, that's a little too realistic in terms of, at the outset here, we're starting the demo. All right, you have to tape everything up. Do I have to, like, with the analog stick, follow along where the tape goes? No, you pop that on, you mask that, everything's fine. Have you had points where you went, like, we can go a little more visceral, or we need to pull it back a little bit so that we maintain the fun?
Yeah, I think originally we looked at things like I had modes where you could see how dry the paint was, and you had to wait for
the timing was a thing.
Sections of the paint to dry, and if you painted it too thickly, it'd start to orange peel and go wrong and drip. We tried quite a few things. It was just too much. It took away from the kind of chilled, just zoning out, playing the game.
It took away from the instant gratification.
Yeah.
Of the old to the new.
We're simulator light. We don't want to be like heavy because it's just not as much fun.
Beyond just the equipment and the look, truly graphics are really important to a game like this because you want to get that feel of like this shiny coat of paint, or if you're painting a house, like the nice matte finish. And so I guess there must have been a lot of focus on that to make sure you get that quite right so it looks good in those moments.
Absolutely. Yes, I mean, it's kind of a few things there. It's like with the style, we definitely went stylized, but we wanted the materials to have realistic properties because that's important from going from a worn to a new painted finish. But we wanted to make it accessible as well in terms of if you do something that's more stylized, people feel maybe more relaxed when they're playing a thing. Also, from an indie developer point of view, if you go realism, then it's quite a lot more work. It's very slow and very expensive. So if we go with this, it's accessible, we can turn things around quicker. But also, we did not want to drop the quality on, like you say, the surface finish, because that's really important to get that right.
Obviously, other simulator games have done some really cool partnerships with different things. Like a Power Wash simulator teamed up with Final Fantasy VII, and you like spray wash Midgars, ridiculous things like that. Is it an idea you would entertain if that opportunity came around?
If that opportunity came around, we'd absolutely entertain that. Of course we would. It's definitely been on our radar, but I think at the moment we're just focusing on getting the game finished, ready and out, and actually getting people to enjoy playing the game, and then we can go from there. I think that's the...
And speaking of, hopefully our listeners are as excited about Spray Paint Simulator as we are now, having tried it out. When can people expect to be looking for it, to check it out and pick it up?
Well, we're just saying 2025 at the moment.
There'll be more information.
There'll be more information.
Sometime soon.
Do you have platforms targeted? Is it just Steam for now?
It's just Steam PC at the moment.
Cool. I have tons of friends who have like every simulator game on Switch so they can take it around in their pocket. And so obviously that's where my brain always goes. Plus, I think every Whitethorn game I own is on Switch. So, I was thinking about that, but I had figured it was Steam first. But that's exciting. It's funny. Seeing a game like this takes me back to the 90s and the different kind of theme controllers that you could have. And like now my brain's like, wow, what if you had like a spray paint gun controller and things like that? Like it's just fun that like none of I'm surprised that Power Wash Simulator hadn't released like a little Power Wash controller, like or done a VR version where you're spraying with a little Power Wash controller.
This is what Light Gun Games was working towards all these years. We need this.
And we are chatting with Chris, the CEO and founder of Toge. Chris, thank you for chatting with us.
Yeah, thank you for coming by.
Of course.
Geoff and I are huge fans of the work that Toge do. We've interviewed a different member of your team pretty much every PAX because we just love getting recent updates. And then, you announced Coffee Talk Tokyo. So that was even more excited. So before we get into the broader Toge stuff, I personally think that it's incredible that you're kind of pivoting into a spin-off to honor the legacy of the original story written and do something new. I assume that was always the idea. If you were ever going to do more Coffee Talk beyond the initial creator's vision, you wanted to do something different to kind of preserve that original narrative.
Actually, we never had any plans to kind of make sequels, but because the Coffee Talks world and the lore and the characters are so interesting and very, a lot of people love it. So we thought it would be a shame just to have just one game and then that's it.
Right.
Because Fahmi, when he wrote the world, there's so many things that we could do and explore. So we decided to kind of okay, let's try add more stories. When we were working on the first game, we were lucky enough that there was a comic writer that worked with us to make the small short comics. And sadly, when Fahmi passed away, that comic writer could help us in completing the story and carrying on the legacy of what Fahmi have written and making an expansion of the world of Coffee Talk.
That's amazing. And it's coming out next year. And do you plan for this to be kind of episodic like the original game was, and like multiple small parts?
It's going to be relatively in the same format. I couldn't say anything more than that right now.
Of course.
Yeah. I want to talk about the broad vision of Toge. You guys have become one of my favorite studios because your palette is so diverse, from tactics games to narrative games to like side-scrolling platformer, dreamlike adventure games. Was that always the vision for the studio, is to kind of let different folks head different games and bring whatever their vision is to life?
Yeah, so because we started as a Flash game development studio back in like 2009.
Yeah.
So during the Flash game era, everybody was like always experimenting on new things, weird things. So it kind of like ingrained in our like DNA, I guess. And we always have like an annual game jam internally in our office, so that everybody can kind of like pitch in. If they have like cool ideas they want to explore, then they have that chance to do it. And that's how we got Coffee Talk. That's through a game jam, also Space for the Unbound. And in the past, we've never made any like narrative games until Coffee Talk. And then we tried to kind of like, why not explore new things? And turns out like making a narrative game kind of like open, like a lot of doors. It kind of like opened our eyes as well to like the power of narrative. And then after that, like, we tried to add more narrative elements in every game that we made. So we're always like experimenting new ideas, giving people chances to kind of like show whatever they have in mind, and then making it a reality.
Speaking to that and the narrative, your games also often have characters and whole stories from different areas of the world that don't always get featured. I imagine that comes from a very personal place of a diverse team from different backgrounds, wanting to share stories that maybe, or cultures or areas that people aren't familiar with.
Yeah, definitely, because like, we're in Indonesia, and a lot of like the media that we watch is always like Hollywood movies, or like it's a Japanese anime. So we always felt like, we have these like a very diverse and rich history and culture from Southeast Asia. I guess like it's not known, like in mainstream media or like worldwide.
Yeah.
We've always wanted to kind of like add that, like sprinkle that in the games that we make. So I guess it's part of our vision and mission that we want to bring more Southeast Asian history, culture, and bring that to the world.
One of the reasons Matt and I love indie games so much is it allows people and creators to put who they are, their history, and everything else in whatever small and large way, and someone else gets to see themselves. And speaking as a white person, getting to see places outside myself, which is why before we started recording, I was playing the demo for Kriegsfront Tactics, and I went, why are we playing the white colonizers right now? I feel a little bad. And you're saying that it's both perspectives. And
we have to start with something that's familiar first, so that everybody can have a point of reference, and then we're going to like take that to a different set of views.
You get invested in the familiar, absolutely, and then you see how it affects and what it is. I love that. Now, we did get to try out Kriegsfront Tactics, and we have, both Matt and I are familiar with Space for the Unbound and Coffee Talk, but also you are demoing here at PAX West Whisper Mountain as well.
Yes.
What can you tell us about that?
So Whisper Mountain Outbreak is a co-op survival horror game where you can play up to 4 players, but you can also play solo. And it's kind of like Resident Evil Outbreak, but combined with Left 4 Dead and in 2.5D graphics. So there's like a mountain in Java called Gunung Bisik, which translates into English into Whisper Mountain. And inside that mountain is a ancient entity that's awakened because of mining that's been done in the mountain. And then the town in the area is cursed by the awakening of that entity. So you're people that are trapped in that town, trying to survive, trying to find a way out. You can play with your friends to work together, solve puzzles, and figure a way out. When you're playing like zombie games, usually it focuses more on action and shooting the zombies. This one focuses more on like collaboration. You have to work together to survive, otherwise you will not make it.
I love that.
Fascinating. I love that idea of taking a trope that's pretty well known and putting it in a different perspective and with a different location. It's very easy for zombie games to be like third-person, first-person shooters, very action-oriented.
Watch the heads explode, get the viscera, big guns. But yeah, no matter what, whether it's shooting the zombies or what Whisper Mountain Outbreak is doing, it's about survival.
Yep.
And why not explore another aspect of survival in an honestly scary situation? We're at Optillusion Games booth. We're talking with Dom, the developer for Pick Me, the competitive dating sim game.
I believe it's a PvP dating sim is how we're calling it.
I believe PvP dating sim is the way to, is that correct?
Yeah, that's pretty innovative.
Fantastic. Well, Dom, what can you tell us about the game as well?
So Pick Me is more like a competitive dating simulation. Like you play with your friends to date a girl or maybe someone else, like to capture their heart. So that's a core idea.
Yeah, so when we first came to the booth to play this game, I had no idea what to expect. I thought it could have been a fighting game to try to fight for their heart. This was you're typing in text in order to impress this person, and there are cards which can totally throw things into the mix. I think I would have been better at the game if I understood what the cards did, but man, some of them were so much fun.
Yeah, we got to reverse meaning. We got to add or take away time from people.
I made it so you couldn't type. You just had to click different words that were running across your screen.
You also forced me to use prithee in one of my statements, which completely turned around everything. I think that's what got me to lose.
I know we both lost.
Yeah, but I only care that I lost.
See, I think we actually really both won because as a couple playing this PvP dating sim, we were really putting in answers to entertain each other.
We got to play We Saw You Across the Bar and really like your vibes.
Yeah, which is not our usual.
Yeah, that's true. It's usually like this game, winning or lose is not important. It's just about fun. So it's more like a party game. So that's why we also offer something like you buy one and get one free copy so you can enjoy the game with your friends.
Fantastic. Well, we have here in the demo sort of the girl on the cover that is the one that we're trying to date here, but are there multiple partners to try to move?
Yeah. There are like 20 different characters. There are male, female, and also some furries. It's not included yet, but we will do that later. And also in the future, we will do the workshop so you can customize your own AI character. Just drag a 3D model, maybe from VRChat or anything else.
Now, as alluded to before, and as you mentioned, a lot of the conversation, everything that goes on here is through generative AI. What can you tell us about the process or about the system that you're using for that?
Yeah, actually we use the OpenAI API for that, and we did a lot of like optimization for it, so it's pretty fast, you can tell, right? And also like it's more like a dynamic stuff. So each time, like when you talk to the character, it would be a totally different conversation, and it really depends on the player. So
each of the characters, the potential suitors and dates, are they each kind of pulling from their own sort of style, their own?
Yeah, they have their own personality, so it would be very different. Like some of them you need to comfort them always. Some of them you might need to be aggressive. So it's very different. You need to learn more about them. So it's a game actually like you can improve your skill somehow.
It makes for a very interesting dynamic, and the timing on it as well, where some people might, in playing a dating sim or a visual novel, if it's their first time with it, worry about making the wrong choices, getting to the end goal, getting to the correct ending. This, in what seems to be much more of a, like you said, a party game kind of setting, it is let's go, let's see what happens. You know, you're not laying out the next 10 hours of your life, you're laying out the next 10 minutes at most. You can't overthink it, you can't over-analyze on any of it, and having a live person next to you or at the other keyboard having to deal with it. Yeah, I think this certainly is somebody who always gets those kinds of overanalyzing nerves. This really blew all of it away. This was just like, what am I going to say? Who cares? Type.
That's just like the core idea of our game. Like usually the AI game is like you play with a chatbot or maybe you play with multiple chatbots. We want to do something like multiplayer. So like two players play with one AI. So AI is more like a judge.
They're a moderator, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So the fun really comes from like different players.
I have an important question. We didn't get too dirty or raunchy with it, but is there any sort of censoring or could it get too much for the girls, right? Like as a woman in gaming, I always worry about, perceived sexual assault, things like that. Is there any sort of guardrails, protection against that in this game.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, like the OpenAI API itself has this kind of stuff. So if we trigger that kind of stuff, we'll just use the default replies, as they will not talk too much about that. So that's a core idea.
So this is the first demo for Pick Me that's public. What is the timeline on this?
We decided to release the beta version in September. We'll definitely have a beta version.
That's coming up fast, and so yeah, people can check that out, and it's going to be released on Steam?
Actually, no. So we released this game on our own website right now. Yeah, because we worry about the policy issue about generative AI on the Steam. So so currently we take this kind of approach, but maybe later we will consider about the Steam.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I hadn't considered that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Are there eventual plans for any sort of console releases as well if Steam has these kinds of limitations?
Yeah, so console might be a little bit hard because it's more like typing. Although we can use the voice input right now, but because it's pretty noisy here, so I won't recommend you to use the dictation.
Of course. So, well, that idea as far as voice to text or anything like that, if you were to expand the release, would it be something like mobile?
Yeah, definitely.
Very cool. I think anybody, if this is intriguing to our listeners, to check out Pick Me from Optillusion. Well, you said if it's not through Steam, it's through your own website. Where can people find the game?
It's just pickme.ai. This is our official website. Pickme.ai.
Pickme.ai. Don, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us and showing this game.
Thank you, guys.
We're talking with Thomas, who is the lead developer on the Rugrats game, Adventure in Gameland. And my first question is, why Rugrats? Was this like a thing you wanted to do and you approached Nickelodeon? Did they approach you guys? Like, how did this happen?
So I don't know as much about sort of the back end of the business deals of it, but it was something that we were pursuing. We really wanted to find a franchise that had that retro appeal to it, so Rugrats really fit well with what our goal, with what we wanted to make was.
There is both an NES version as well as a modern console version of the game, and you can switch between the aesthetics and the design of it on the fly in the modern version. You said that it started as the 8-bit development first. What was that process like?
This is actually, we've done a few other 8-bit games as well. We did Jay and Silent Bob, Mall Brawl.
Yeah.
We did that with Limited Run a few years back. So I was already familiar with the NES platform and stuff. After developing that 8-bit version, make a modern looking version as well and have that live toggle. So you kind of got a retro game and its remake in the same package.
Were there guidelines from Nickelodeon about the modern version and like how they should look or feel? Like, did they have input, or did they really just give you the freedom to create the world?
As far as like level design and difficulty and all that kind of stuff, we had a lot of which characters we wanted to use, that kind of stuff. We had a lot of freedom that way. But when it came to like the character designs and the look and feel of it, that's really where Nickelodeon wanted to step in and just make sure, through reviews and stuff like that, to make sure that we nailed the characters. Their designs would match with the animated versions.
And the 8-bit version that you can switch to, which is the aesthetic I prefer just because it reminds me of games from my youth, it's not designed to look identical to the cartoon. That's what the HD version's for. It's designed as if a game in the 90s based on a property came out, like a la DuckTales and those. Was that like the plan from the beginning? Like, when we're doing the 8-bit version, we want this aesthetic of those old school licensed Nintendo games.
Yeah, I think that really was like what we wanted to do. Like a lot of references from, like you said, like DuckTales or like even things like Bonk's Adventure, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
sort of evoke that era in time. As well, just like dealing with pixel art at such a low resolution, you're almost forced to go with that kind of design aesthetic,
right?
If you want to make it look good.
Yeah.
Naturally, if you're designing this and it goes on the NES, you have the resolution to deal with. You have the sprite limitations. You have palette. When converting it for modern and being able to switch back and forth, was there any zhuzhing going on as far as like, okay, we don't have to worry about that resolution here. We can kind of work that. Because we noticed it still has the sprite flicker if the baby sprites are on top of each other. Was there anywhere where you got to kind of spread a little bit once you were off of the NES?
Yeah, definitely things like sprite flicker and stuff like that we don't have to worry about. Since it is running the NES version when you play in 8-bit mode, you still do get that sprite flicker and stuff, and I think just keeping that in the 8-bit version, even on modern consoles, is a really fun part of the experience, because a lot of kind of modern 8-bit style games don't necessarily adhere right to that level, but to me that's a part of the experience, you know what I mean? You got too many sprites on the screen at a time and they start to flicker or whatever, but we were definitely able to get around things like, say, the system slowdown or like things like that.
The nostalgia without the necessary setbacks.
Exactly.
talking a little bit about the composition, so you have like the title screens are literally out of the cartoon. You have that tone, the da-da-da, but then there's tons of music in the stages that sound evocative of Rugrats without being identical. What was the inspiration to just lean in the kind of soundscapes the cartoon had, or were there other genres or inspirations you were pulling from to design the level music?
So the team that did the music, Fat Bird, I mean, they did a great job. I can't really speak so much specifically to their inspiration, but we definitely wanted to keep that kind of heart of Rugrats throughout it. So
that's amazing. And a game like this where you're designing for 8-bit and then creating an HD thing, is there anything that like you saw in the 8-bit version that you're like, oh, when we go to the HD version, we have to do this or add this or change the design this way?
I really wanted to try to keep the gameplay and all that kind of stuff as one-to-one as possible. So a lot of what the extras that you see in the HD version are more cosmetic. Like, so it'd be things like you might see more things in the background, like background objects. Like the desert level that we have here, it's like you've got the Angelica Sphinx in the background. We might not have had enough space to put something as cool like that in the 8-bit version, just a tech limitation. So being able to insert some of those extra details was really cool.
Amazing.
Definitely all of the boss fights, we tried to pick some of like the iconic scary characters episodes. The ones that, there's a jungle level, we have Thorg, like the gorilla that was fighting against Reptar when they were in the toy store.
Yeah.
Like, Thorg hungry, Thorg want to eat. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
So like a lot of the ones that only showed up in a single episode, but they were really memorable.
Yeah.
We tried to get as many of those in for the boss fights, because it's the scary moments of Rugrats are the ones that people remember.
And what is a boss battle if
Exactly,
not?
the boss battle should be scary.
Amazing. And I guess to start to wrap up, this is coming out as of when we're recording in early September. So can you tell listeners the release date and the platforms it'll be on, how they can get their hands on it?
Yeah, so it's coming out on September 10th on Steam, Switch, PlayStation, September 11th on Xbox.
Amazing.
So all major platforms, September 10th, more or less. The physical release is coming out in December.
Amazing. Awesome.
Nice. And well, not to completely blow up spots or anything, but between Jay and Silent Bob Mall Brawl and Rugrats, there's a lot of great love for 90s nostalgia, for things like that. If there was a property that you wanted to adapt or put into either an old school NES style game or anything, do you have one that you have in mind?
I think I could. I don't know if I can actually say right now, but
That's
there's
totally
definitely
fine. Like you're already kind of formulating the
there's
kinds of...
definitely more 80s, 90s properties that we're looking at. So
I always ask that question with the knowledge that, you know, sometimes it's better to just wait and
That's
see.
right. That's right.
Chatting with Bugs and Spider, the creators of More Than One Way. Thank you for joining me. So I just got to demo the game. The first thing I want to ask is, this is very much an homage to like 90s internet culture. Is that just something that you were both really nerdy about and wanted to work into a video game?
We are very passionate about the internet because we grew up alongside it. The big boom of internet technology advancing really fast. We were there for it. Since the 2000s, we met online. We are married now. Everyone that works in this game, we met online. So it's a very personal part of us. It's not just about the beginning of the internet. We want to showcase every part of that growth. So all these characters come from the different eras, from the birth to modern times. A lot of people try to skip over those awkward middle parts of the internet, but there's something special in there too, and we want to showcase that as well.
Especially given the fact that it's often been said that nothing on the internet is ever truly forgotten. And
Yes.
having those awkward middle phases, we like to gloss those over, but you can still find evidence of it. And sometimes, you know, the music file doesn't play anymore, but
Yeah.
the images still load. For something that has all of the different elements of horror to it, and found footage and pieces found and things put together, that's, I feel, essential.
You know, we participated in so many subcultures ourselves, but there's also on top of that, like, I love deep diving on subcultures I've never even heard of. There's corners of the internet you will never see, especially in those awkward years, in the early years. It was so easy to just kind of fade into these obscure corners, and it's fascinating, and that is, to me, the best part of the internet. And I kind of mourn that we move away from that with, like, the social media where everything is
less personalized.
Yeah, we always talk about the less personalized internet, and that's even why we made like our kind of web experience that we have online through NeoCities, because we love GeoCities, and we want to bring that back. You can still make accounts, and we want to make our own
Yeah, you
personal
can still
sites
make your
too,
own
you know?
websites. We love making
Bring it
websites.
back.
You told me a little bit before I played about the slice, but can you go into a little more detail about like what the narrative of this game is, what like the hook that pulls it together is?
So the concept of the game is that the player is stuck in a haunted video game. and you have to find out what happened to the 3 developers that were making it. The concept of the game within the game is a crossover horror game. So all these characters come from different narratives and are put together in this game, and all connected to the same storyline about the developers.
I love that. That's awesome. Being able to create these different characters from these different eras must have given you freedom to dabble with different soundscapes, different music.
Yes.
I have a feeling that the game is, in a good way, very schizophrenic, right? Because you're involved in these very jarringly different worlds. It must have been fun to kind of jump from place to place when creating it.
It was very interesting, and at first we felt very limited with the path we were going for the game, and switching it to, we don't have to limit it to one art style. We don't have to limit it to be a cohesive, everything looks like it belongs together. It can be a little unorthodox, a little out there, and it still can fit together by following the same narrative. It still can have similarities. You can still tell it flows together without it looking cookie cutter the same.
Especially because we are a really small team and we're all very close to each other here, but we still grew up on different internets. We grew up playing different things. Something you mentioned is that you grew up playing a lot of point and click, and I loved Nancy Drew and Freddy Fish, and so I like putting my kind of influence with that there. But he grew up enjoying a lot of forums, and so there's a lot of that in the game, and it's fun to kind of use that to our advantage to make it feel more like the individual experience.
And speaking on that, I mean, one of my other formative experiences was chat rooms, and the AOL chat rooms in particular, and that kind of the relationships that you build and the images that you build up with the people around it. In some of this development, were you able to kind of tap into those memories as well, or sort of kind of recreate the connections there in the pastiches and corners of what you're making?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly tried, and we hope that people are able to see that when they play the game. We also try to even touch upon things that we're not as familiar with and spend time researching it, which was very interesting to try to find archives of old websites, of old chat rooms. Most chat rooms are dead now. Not only if they're still up, entirely abandoned, but the websites are just completely gone. So it was interesting to try to find archives of that side of the old internet as well. It's interesting because it's not that hard to make horror out of spaces like that. They were already very unsettling to begin with.
Yeah, you've got kind of the liminal space to it a little bit. You have, and it's very funny, while Matt was playing through this, I also had friends that would send me screamers and send me Goatsy and send me all of the dumb things, and headphones on, browsing the internet at 2 a.m, hoping my parents don't hear me. And always being a little aware, a little afraid of I'm on the internet right now. Anything could pop up. There could be a loud noise. There could be anything. This is almost a fun kind of, this is everything I was worried the internet would do to me when I was 13 happening now. And it's kind of fun to have it in a gamed package, in a designed thing. I just very much enjoy that as well.
That's one of the best descriptions of the game I've ever heard. I love that.
So obviously this has a very PC bent, so I assume the target is for sure Steam. Do you guys plan on a broad release? Do you have an idea of when and where people will be able to play this game?
Yeah, so the demo itself, it's going to be on Steam and itch, like you mentioned. But in the future, we think it would be really interesting to expand to other consoles, because I feel like there is a creative way to kind of bring that experience to a console.
We already have some ideas about
making a haunted console. One of the things that kind of blew my mind is with Doki Doki Literature Club, when they show the desktop and you're on their version of the computer, it's we can build the spaces within the spaces.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really fun. Do you guys have a release area window yet, or is it just current and active development?
After the demo, we have a Kickstarter coming out very soon.
Very cool.
Depending on how that goes, it might affect the timeline of the first installment of the game.
Awesome. Well, please let us know about that. Share the Kickstarter with us. We'll share with everybody else. But this was great. I'm only very new to horror games. Started playing them in the last handful of years. I played Iron Lung for the first time this year, and it blew my mind how simple that was, and yet how terrifying it was. And I get a lot of that here too, especially in that one room, just exploring and constantly hearing something behind me. So I love what you guys are doing, and I'm really excited to see the final product. Geoff and I have the honor of talking with the one and only Dan Paladin, co-founder of Behemoth, and one of the incredible masterminds behind the whole design ethos of these games artistically. Dan, it's really great to chat with you.
It's good to be here. Thanks for covering us. That's how we are still around today, the word of mouth.
It's interesting because I feel like you guys disappeared from PAX for a little while, and then when you came back, you had Alien Hominid Invasion, and now you're talking about DLC. It feels like there was this choice to kind of go head down and work on what's next, because it had been a while since you'd released something.
Well, we wanted to keep our guys safe. You know, the whole apocalypse thing happened. And then, you know, now we're good. Now we have lots to say. I think this is the first time. So the Behemoth always has a lot happening under the hood, but usually we don't show everything at once.
Right.
So now here we are showing that we have BattleBlock's getting basically a remaster of sorts. It's coming to new platforms, and it's getting more content, but we didn't say what yet. Alien Hominid HD and Alien Hominid Invasion coming to PlayStation 4 and 5. It's a DLC, which is Painter Boss Paradise for Castle Crashers, where you can make your own characters, change out the enemies, download other people's stuff on the workshop for Steam. Then we have a new game that's coming out, and we have an update to Pit People. So that's everything that's happening at the same time. And I'm happy that we just said, you know what, let's just tell everybody, because a lot of the time we'll hear, well, what about this one? What about that one? Well, now literally everything that we've made has something happening with it.
Yeah. It's great that the Behemoth has been able to maintain that sort of fan base, that sort of connection. Something I've always loved about Behemoth, and I feel like you're the person to talk to about this, is the consistency of style. It never feels stale, but it always feels Behemoth.
Well, thank you.
There's something so cool about getting to see a game, not knowing what it is, what it's from, and going, that's a Behemoth, and being right. And so how has keeping things fresh while also maintaining that been for over the years and for you?
One thing is that every time we do a game, we do it in a new genre. And even with the revisitation of Invasion from HD, very different game, right?
Yeah.
So whenever we approach something, it's a new genre that we've never touched, but we love. We think, well, what could we do with it? What can we bring to it that would be different? And we have fun with it. Something like the pooping owl was something I made to make Tom laugh, right?
Right.
Because he has to implement it. Here you go, you know, and then he laughs, and I see that, and so I made the deer, then we made the bear, and then Tom put it together. He's like, well, what are they all crapping about? So then Tom was like, what about this huge thing that's shaking the camera, and then they're foreshadowing this scary thing that's coming through the forest for you. And I think that's what keeps things fresh, is it's always different. And for me, it's super easy because I'm on art and design, so I can do one side of the brain or the other. I can jump between each and never get burned out. But we think about, like, you guys having fun with the game. That's why we do it, right? We're just having fun with your friends in the arcades. That's why we have the arcade machines out front, you know, because that's sort of the spirit of everything.
I'm curious with the Alien Hominid Invasion. This is the first game that was a direct sequel to a previous game, a continuing story. But was there any debate before picking a sequel, or was it always like, as soon as we can, we want to do an Alien Hominid Invasion?
So technically it's a sequel, but that's not what we call it.
Right.
Because the expectations that get set when you call it that, since they play so differently. But it was basically because Alien Hominid HD was disappearing from all modern platforms just through time. And there was nowhere to really pick it up anymore. So we decided, well, let's bring it to new systems, right? And in doing that, I said, well, what would a new Alien look like? And so we gave it a shot, did a prototype, and it was fun to jump all over the place. The prototype rolled into something new. It's easier to follow our gut, and usually we want to explore brand new universes. But there's no reason to, you know, go back and check stuff out. Like for Painter Boss Paradise, I was doing the same steps. Like, what would the knights look like now? Same thing I was doing with Alien. And while I was doing that, I was like, I can swap this stuff out pretty fast. What if you guys could do that? Like, what if I made it so you guys could do that? And so then I was thinking about the steps for it, and our programmers are amazing, so we just put our heads together, and I was like, can we get this just all on one page, and you just redraw over top of it and make whatever you want? And they're like, yeah, we can do that. I'm like, okay. So we went for it, and I always feel bad for the bosses.
Yeah.
You know, the Frost King, I feel bad for. He freezes from the feet up, and he's screaming. It's horrible. But like Painter Boss, he's just screaming for help while you kill him, just running around painting things, and they're defending him. He never attacks you a single time. to redeem him. And he's like, come on, let's drop all that. Let's just work together. Let's make things together. Like, it melts my heart a little bit. You know, you get to work with him now and put the swords down and create things. You also get Paint Jr. as well as a new character.
That's excellent. I mean, I think there's a lot of excitement for a staple of gaming that was making games before there was a title for what you guys make, indie games, right? On the Xbox Live Arcade, they were live arcade games. That's what we called them often. And when the PS3 got into the mix, like, it was, so many downloadable games. But, like, the indie scene, though I'm sure it had a name for longer, is now so in the zeitgeist. And it must feel good to be one of the pioneers of that transformation of the industry and continue to help innovate it with the new projects.
I never even think of it like that, though. I forget. Like, my brain thinks about, like, last year and now. I'm never looking ahead or behind. It freaks me out. It feels surreal because I'm thinking back when we started, we had to convince GameStop managers to carry copies of our physical product because that's all we had. There was no digital distribution. Minecraft had like a website where you just had to give them your credit card information. It was just like there was no digital distribution. No. And then all of a sudden it showed up, and I think everybody won when digital distribution showed up because we can charge less per copy but see more per copy of our cut. We don't run out of product. You don't have to get, the truck driver's late or anything like that, right?
Right.
And you can update your game so you don't have to worry about the bugs that are... Alien Hominid had a couple showstoppers on it, and there was nothing we could do about it. It was just, there it is. And it just keeps shifting and shifting. Things are getting crazy. In a way, it's spooky, but I really like it. It's fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Dan, for giving us your time and your energy. We are huge fans of your games. I know that you don't have a release date for the Painter DLC yet, but you're looking at next year, I assume, sometime.
I'm going to try to hit that. I have no promises, no announcements. We don't have a release date for anything, unfortunately.
Right. You just want to see where you can hit it and get it out when it's ready?
Yeah, and I think the first thing it'll probably hit is going to be the Alien Hominid Invasion in HD ports.
Yeah.
And then probably the Battle Block Theater remaster. Like, logistically, those will probably be the first ones to hit.
Cool.
For Painter's stuff, it won't be too long. Just so nobody's expectations get crazy. There's no story change or anything. It's just, you get a tool. You can work with the Painter boss. You can see new stuff. You can see the redraws I did of all the characters, which I like. It's the first time we flipped the script. So like now I can be like, what did you guys make? Right? Now it's like, let's see it.
Oh man, Twitter's gonna get weird.
And the first day is gonna be awesome because we're gonna release the template before we release. So
people can start making stuff
Yeah, you
in
can
advance.
take your time, make your perfect character, and on day one you can just boom, put them right into the tool, upload it to the workshop, and they'll, so I can't wait for day one. I want to sift through it all. It's gonna be awesome.
My name's Dave Proctor. I am the director at Mighty Yell. We're making a game called All Systems Dance.
I'm Abby Howard.
And I'm Tony Howard Arias.
My name's Toby Alden. I'm the lead developer at brlka Games.
I'm Nick. I'm the artist. I spray paint simulator.
I'm Adam, the programming side of North Star Video Games, the other half of the team.
I'm Chris Anthony from Toge Productions.
I'm the developer of Pick Me, and While Waiting, I'm also the founder of the Optillusion games.
I'm Thomas Guinan, lead developer at the Mix Games.
I'm Bugs.
I'm Spider.
And we're the co-creators of More Than One Way with Disordered Media.
So I'm Dan Paladin from the Behemoth, and
Happy gaming.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.